was a beautiful young gal, and she had a great personality.
She was amazing. She was so kind and so caring. She was my sister. She was my everything.
Is found murdered in her bedroom.
She had been strangled quite violently.
Whoever the killer was crushed the victim's neck.
Police hunt for the culprit.
I had in my mind who committed the crime.
We were convinced that he was our guy.
But the prime suspect slips from their grasp.
I don't get it. Did he really get away with it?
Decades later, leaps in forensic science reignite the investigation.
We're not giving up on the case. Is there a smoking gun? We gotta find it.
I figured that if this case could be solved, it could be solved now.
And new evidence leads to a killer no one saw coming.
It was shocking, it was unexpected, but guess what? We have a new suspect.
I was stunned. I was like, really?
In the early morning hours of June 6, 1980, the peaceful suburb of Woods Cross, Utah, is shaken by a frantic 911 call.
What's your name? Steve Strong. Please hurry.
Woods Cross had never had a homicide. This was the first one, and it definitely was not something we were used to.
Police respond to the modest home on the outskirts of Salt Lake City.
Well, I got called to respond to this house that they'd said there had been a homicide. So I went into the bedroom area where the victim was, laying on the floor, kind of laying up against the bed. She appeared that she was in her sleeping clothes, a little t-shirt and a pair of panties. First thing that I noticed, she had bruising and scratches on her neck area that looked like she had been strangled, and been strangled quite violently. In fact, I believe that she had put up quite a struggle and quite a fight. Torn fingernails and some bruising on her legs and her feet. It was an indication she fought pretty hard. It looked like she had been knocked off of the bed onto the floor. 2 or 3 of the rungs in the bed that had been broken out. So it's obvious that there was a pretty good struggle had taken place there.
Police searched the rest of the house, looking for clues to what happened.
And looking around, I didn't believe that there could have been a robbery or anything of that nature because everything else was in place.
It did not look like a robbery or theft. This looked more like a personal attack. This looked more like that she was the target of her killer.
Investigator believes the victim is his wife, 25-year-old Karen Strom.
Looking at Steve, he was kind of hysterical, just very upset that his wife was dead.
Steve worked at a manufacturing plant on the graveyard shift.
He said everything was fine when he left the house the night before to go to work. He worked the night shift till about 7 in the morning. And when he got home, he walked into the bedroom and saw his wife.
While investigators continue their hunt for clues, police inform Karen's family of the tragic news.
At work at the phone company, my stepmother called me and said, "Your sister's dead." I said, "What? What happened?" She goes, "We don't know yet." That was heart-wrenching. I wanted to know what happened to my sister.
Karen Saltzgiver was born in Bountiful, Utah in 1954, the oldest of 3 children.
Karen and I were 5 years apart. My parents divorced when we were younger, and that's always rough on kids. It was a struggle. But Karen was always there, playing mom, and I think it was just her nurturing instinct. She was amazing. She was strong.
In 1973, Karen married Steve Strom right out of high school at the age of 18.
Karen and Steve were high school sweethearts. Karen was very outgoing, very fun, very loving, and Steve was very quiet. She saw something in him. They used to go four-wheel driving a lot and up in the mountains a lot. There was a sense of freedom for her, and Karen loved nature.
Over the next 7 years, the young couple worked hard to build a life of their own.
Steve worked at a machine shop. Karen worked in accounting for the state of Utah. And they had an apartment in North Salt Lake, and then they bought a house in Woods Cross. It was a family-oriented place, and it was a new development. She was so excited because she got a house and a good job. You know, she had her Camaro and yellow. Yellow was her favorite color. It seemed like her life was on the right path.
Karen's seemingly perfect marriage had a troubling hidden side.
Steve liked to drink, and I think that's what caused a lot of the problems in their marriage. When Steve wasn't drinking, he was very quiet, but when he drank, Yeah, there was a whole other side of him that came out. He was mean. What I witnessed with Steve was a lot of screaming and yelling, and then he'd leave. Mostly, what I witnessed with Steve with my sister was the aftermath. She had bruises, and Karen got good at hiding the bruises with makeup, but it's like, you could see them. To me, I didn't understand. Karen defended Steve all the time. He's just going through a bad time. Things are rough. He'll get over it. It's okay.
But 3 months prior to Karen's murder, something changed between her and Steve.
Karen finally had enough. Told Steve she wanted a divorce, and I thought...
But before Karen can move on, her life is brutally cut short.
My world had just fallen apart. My world was crushed. She was everything. She was my sister, my protector. She was my best friend.
As Coco struggles to come to grips with Karen's death. Back at the crime scene, police continue their search for clues to who may have attacked Karen during the night.
There was no indication that anybody had broke into the house. The next door neighbor said that she had heard nothing. Steve had calmed down by that time. He said that he found the doors locked, and when he got home, used his key and went into the house.
As Steve is being questioned, Coco arrives looking for answers.
The police didn't give me any details on exactly what happened. They did say that she had been strangled. Then they brought her body out in a black bag, and that just tore me up. It's like, that's my sister. Don't put her in there. Steve was sitting there, and I just looked at him like he finally did it. There was no in my mind that Steve did it.
When Coco got to the house there, the first thing she said, he did it, he finally did it, he killed her.
Anytime you have an incident like this, always start with the husband.
Coming up, detectives discover a tangle of relationships.
Steve said that everything was going great with them. It was pretty obvious that it was not.
Failing the polygraph was pretty damning.
Before their hunt for a killer produces a jaw-dropping twist.
An innocent person just wouldn't flee.
We were worried if we came to the door, he was going to shoot us.
And a new suspect with a dark past emerges.
He raped a girl, and then he stabbed her with a screwdriver and left her for dead.
Who is this guy, and how did he know my sister?
Police in Woods Cross, Utah are investigating the murder of 25-year-old Karen Strong. Her sister, Coco, has told police she suspects Karen's husband, Steve Strong, is the one that killed her.
Coco had been really close with Karen, and they talked a lot, and she had expressed that Steve was a heavy drinker, and when he got drunk or he'd been drinking, he got mean, he got abusive. Coco didn't like him at all.
Detectives learn how Karen had decided to end things with Steve 3 months ago.
She filed for divorce, and then she moved out to my stepmother's house.
Coco says that Karen was only at the house the night she was killed because she felt sorry for Steve.
It was his birthday and their anniversary. Steve had called her and said, "Can you come out? We'll just have dinner together." And she did, because of her kind heart.
Coco and just kind of stay with him for a couple of days.
Recently separated from Steve, Karen had a new suitor named Buff.
Karen told me a little about Buff, that she met this guy that was really different, and he treated her really kind. And I don't know if she thought it would go anywhere, but I know it meant the world to her. He showed her that she could be treated decent, and that she deserved it.
Coco said that Steve was also a very jealous person, and in her mind she was sure that he had killed her.
I said, how could it be anybody else? It was Steve.
Detectives confront Steve Strong about Coco's allegations.
He consistently stated that he had a good relationship with his wife and that there was no abuse.
Steve, that the only reason that they were getting a divorce, it was his drinking. He said that they had worked things out and that they were going to get back together, and she was not going to go through with the divorce.
Investigators ask Steve to account for his movements leading up to when he last saw Karen alive.
Steve said that he and Karen had gone out to dinner earlier that evening, and then they'd come home and watch TV, and then he got ready and left for work.
If Steve is telling the truth, Karen was killed sometime after midnight when Steve left for work, and before 7 a.m. when he returned home to find her body. Detectives ask if the doors were locked during that time. How did Karen's killer get into the house?
Steve gave us the name of about 4 or 5 people that she might have opened the door for, but it indicated probably the one that she would really open the door for after she went to bed would have been Buff.
Steve admits that he knew Karen had been dating Buff while they were separated.
Steve said that the relationship with Karen and Buff was over, and that they were getting back together and gonna make another go of their marriage.
With nothing concrete to hold him, detectives let Steve go. After police release Steve, the news that Karen was murdered spreads through Karen's family.
It just broke everybody's heart. My mom, that was her oldest daughter. She couldn't deal with it. She just shut down and shut off. It was just heart-wrenching. It was something that was so surreal. I was trying to wrap my head around. She's really gone?
As Karen's loved ones reel from the murder, detectives head to the factory where her husband, Steve, works as a machinist to confirm his timeline and verify his story.
I talked to the supervisor and got copies of his time card, and as far as anybody there could remember, he was on his machine the entire time.
Despite confirming that Steve was at work when he said he was, investigators cannot dismiss their suspicion of him without a better idea of when Karen had been killed.
That timeline was very important to the case because
as detectives continue their investigation at Steve's workplace, one of Steve's co-workers they speak with is 29-year-old Ed Owens.
Steve Strom had named Ed Owens as one of the individuals that Karen would have allowed in. Ed and Steve were not only co-workers, but they had become friends. They socialized together, socialized with their spouses. Both of them liked to drink, and so they oftentimes did it together.
There was an incident where Steve would end up so intoxicated that Ed and Karen had to take Steve home and carry him into the house to put him to bed.
Ed tells detectives that he was working the shift before Steve arrived that night, but had left the plant for his meal break around 8 p.m.
Ed had said that he had left work and had gone to the local bar to get his lunch, and he started drinking with some friends till they closed the bar, and then went out in the parking lot and continued drinking.
Ed came back to the plant about 4:30 in the morning. He was obviously intoxicated. Steve had actually offered Ed a ride home, but Ed had refused and drove home intoxicated.
As investigators talk to Ed, something about his appearance draws their attention.
I did notice that he had some scratches on his arm and close to his eye on the nose.
Detectives question Ed about the scratches. Could he have been scratched while he attacked Karen?
He explained those as he worked on the lathe and there was the shavings. It was always kind of getting scratches or cuts on his thing. Talked to the supervisor at his work, and he indicated that happens quite frequently.
Just to be sure, detectives ask Ed's co-workers to confirm he was drinking with them the night of the murder.
I interviewed the people he was hanging out with, and they all stated that he was there, and he didn't have any motive as far as I could determine.
With Ed's alibi confirmed, investigators turn their attention to the other man in Karen's love life, her boyfriend, Buff. Did he have motive for murder?
Steve Strom told the police they were reconciling. So then we have to begin to question Karen's termination of that relationship with Buff.
If they were going to get back together, Buff would have been upset about that. His attitude might have been, if he couldn't have her, nobody else would.
Less than a day after 25-year-old Karen Strom is found strangled to death, police in Woods Cross, Utah have ruled out her husband's friend, Ed Owens, as the killer.
There was no indication that Ed had been involved in the death of Karen.
But despite verifying his alibi, detectives do keep Karen's estranged husband, Steve Strom, on the suspect list.
Her sister Coco.
Now, investigators want to speak with the man Karen started dating shortly after separating from Steve.
Buff Bangeter was a man who Karen Strom had had some degree of a relationship with, and so of course law enforcement had reason to talk to Buff.
Detectives begin the interview with the 35-year-old mechanic by informing him of Karen's murder.
He seemed upset when he found out that she had been killed.
Then, Buff stuns investigators by revealing just how serious his relationship with Karen had become.
According to Buff, they had wanted to get married, and it was Buff that persuaded her to go back to see Steve to be sure that what she wanted to do was get the divorce.
Detectives asked Buff where he was on the night Karen was killed.
Buff stated he was at home that whole evening and he would not have harmed her in any way. And he also made the comments that he thought it was Steve. According to Buff, it was pretty obvious that he was very angry about Buff's relationship with Karen.
Even with no one to back up his alibi, police decide to let Buff go.
We didn't eliminate him entirely, but after we interviewed and talked to Buff, we felt pretty confident that he was not the one who had committed that crime. I couldn't place anyone else having done the crime except for Steve. He remained my number one suspect.
While they wait for crime lab analysis to be completed, detectives keep digging into the people Karen may have led into the house the night she was killed.
I interviewed each of the individuals who Steve indicated that he thought she might let in, took blood samples from each of them. I covered all the bases that I could.
Investigators also received the forensics report from the crime.
Crime lab went clear through the house and checking for fingerprints, and there was no fingerprints in the house that they could find other than Steve Strom and Karen. And that was pretty damaging as far as evidence towards Steve.
Karen's autopsy results also come back and show no evidence of sexual assault, but do confirm strangulation as the cause of death.
Whoever the killer was crushed the victim's neck. This was an aggressive, violent, vicious attack. Karen was scratching and clawing and fighting for her life.
Karen's fingernails are clipped and preserved.
As far as DNA back in 1980, there was not a lot more that they could do. The testing you could do with any sort of evidence was very limited.
The autopsy also provides an idea of when Karen was killed.
The approximate time of death was between 10 p.m. on the night of the 5th and 2 a.m. on the morning of the 6th.
This means it was possible.
A strong alibi.
By his own statements, it was after midnight when he went to work, so he was at home during that period of time.
Armed with this new information, investigators reach out to get Steve in for another interview, and he makes a surprise request.
Steve requested to take a polygraph. He said that he was innocent, he didn't kill his wife. Polygraphs are not admissible into court, but it would also have been a good tool to see if he was lying or not. We did a polygraph. Asked him if he knew who killed his wife, if he killed his wife, and if she was dead when he went to work. According to the polygraph operator, on those particular questions, he was extremely negative as far as being truthful.
Failing the polygraph was pretty damning to Steve, and we were more and more convinced that Steve was involved in this murder.
Detectives still need more evidence in order to charge Steve with Karen's murder.
I interviewed some of the people she worked with. It indicated that numerous times saw her with bruises when she came to work. At one time that she had bruises on her neck, and that she made a comment to them that Steve had choked her. She felt that she was lucky to be alive.
The co-worker's account is the final evidence police need to charge Steve, and a warrant is issued for his arrest.
We went to arrest him at work, but he was not there. One of the co-workers told us Steve was with a friend down in North Salt Lake in an apartment. They had indicated that he was worried that we were coming after him. He was possibly going to be violent and resist arrest. We were worried that if we came to the door, he was going to shoot us.
Police proceed to the apartment address with caution and establish a safety perimeter around the building.
We knew he had guns, that he might be violent. We were anticipating the possibility of it being a very difficult arrest.
Police investigating the murder of Karen Strong are preparing to arrest their main suspect, her estranged husband, Steve.
He had been known to have a weapon. It was a .357 Magnum. We was told that Steve had also made a comment to one of his co-workers that if the police come to get him, he was going to take a couple of pigs with him.
Having that information made us feel very nervous about approaching him.
Police maintain their distance, fearful of a violent confrontation.
There was a SWAT team that was organized that had surrounded the apartment. After several phone calls into the apartment, Steve wasn't cooperative.
Steve refuses to answer police phone calls. 3 hours tick by.
Managed to come out peacefully.
2 months after his wife was killed, Steve is finally arrested for Karen's murder. The news quickly spreads to her loved ones.
The whole family, when they found out Steve was arrested, kind of breathed a sigh of relief. Good. You know, it was one step closer to being over.
After 2 months of investigation, prosecutors believe they have enough evidence to convict Steve of killing his 25-year-old wife.
There was significant pieces of evidence that pointed at Steve Strong circumstantially. It appeared that he had opportunity, didn't have a good alibi, he had motivation, potentially jealousy, he had history of domestic violence, particularly when Steve would drink. You had the incident where the co-worker saw Karen with strangulation marks on her neck, and Karen had told her it was Steve Strong that did it. So that was a significant component to the case. Put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and it did look like they've got a reasonable likelihood of conviction.
Steve is held on remand for 6 months as prosecutors prepare their case. But just before the trial is set to begin, Steve's defense attorney asked the judge to exclude the testimony from Karen's coworker about Steve strangling Karen.
The defense said the coworker didn't actually see it. The coworker is only reporting what Karen told her in what's known as double hearsay. And the judge made an evidentiary ruling that disallowed prosecutors from using that evidence or information at trial.
And that was kind of a shocker to me because that was one of our key pieces of evidence. Interviews where people had seen the bruises, she had told them who gave her the bruises. Unfortunately, all of that comes out to be hearsay evidence and was not going to be admissible to court.
Without an eyewitness to abuse, prosecutors have a hole in their case against Steve.
Without that information, they don't have enough evidence to persuade a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that he killed Karen. And if they go forward and lose, Steve Strong, because of double jeopardy, could never be prosecuted again for Karen's murder.
Prosecutors make the difficult decision to drop the charges and let Steve walk free.
When I found out the charges wouldn't hold, my heart just sank. It's like, what? Why is this happening? Show me why this is happening, because I can't wrap myself around this. I just didn't understand why they didn't have the evidence.
Coco was very upset that we had released him, and so was I, but most of the evidence that we had against him was circumstantial evidence. We didn't have any hard evidence towards Steve.
For the next 4 months, detectives continue digging, trying to find the evidence they need to close the case.
I did a lot of running around during that time, interviewing people and trying to find more evidence. However, most of the stuff we were getting was still hearsay.
By the time
I felt that I had done everything that I could. My main thing at the time was making sure that I preserved all the evidence we had collected, so if something did come up later, we would be able to use it.
In the summer of 1981, the hunt for Karen's killer goes cold.
A year went by, another year went by, and I'd call, anything, do you have anything new? Nothing, Coco, nothing, and it's like, did he really get away with it?
The case remains cold for more than 2 decades, but police in Woods Cross never forget the murder of Karen Strong.
I retired in 2005. However, I have to admit that I was still upset about the fact that I could not tie Steve to the murder.
In 2006, 26 years after the crime, new detectives take a fresh look.
This case was a high-profile case, and at one time there had been a lull in the caseload, so I had asked if I could focus all my time on this case. Knowing that there was new developments in science, I figured that it was the right time to pick this up, because if this case could be solved, it could be solved now. I went through the evidence, looking for specific items that could be tested. The items that we sent into the lab for examination first were Karen's fingernails.
Police in 1980 found material under Karen's fingernails, but had no way of testing it. Could this hold the key to identifying Karen's killer?
We was quite worried that the evidence had degraded. I mean, it had been 26 years.
The crime lab tests Karen's fingernails, searching for her attacker's DNA.
When those results came back, it was a bombshell. There was DNA of Steve Strom underneath Karen's fingernails, but also there was unexpected DNA evidence underneath Karen Strom's fingernails. And guess what? We have a new suspect.
Investigators who have reopened the cold case murder of Karen Strong have just received their first clue in more than 25 years. DNA from under Karen's fingernails has been traced to two different men, her husband, Steve Strong, and someone on the original investigator's radar.
That DNA belonged to Ed Owens. The fact that Ed Owens' DNA was underneath Karen Strom's fingernails, it was shocking.
Ed Owens was Steve's friend and co-worker. Ed's blood had been collected in 1980, when police first considered him a suspect.
There was no recent contact between.
The presence of Ed and Steve's DNA is evidence to investigators the men had contact with Karen. But is it a sign that one or both had killed her? In search of answers, detectives tracked down the now 56-year-old Owens.
Ed and his wife were currently living in Falls Church, Virginia. Initially, when I was talking with Ed, he started asking me questions as far as who the suspect was and any new developments in the case. I was suspicious when talking to Ed because of the questions that he was asking me. I wanted him to come into Woods Cross and meet with me and discuss this matter face to face.
Ed Owens agrees to come back to speak with investigators the following week. Detectives also reach out to the now 53-year-old Steve Strong.
Steve had moved to Henderson, Nevada. I contacted Steve and asked him if he would come up from Henderson and meet with me and go over his statement that he gave back in 1980. He wasn't at all that cooperative. He said that for years he's been telling the authorities that he didn't do it, and he believed that we was still after him.
For prosecutors, Steve's DNA under Karen's fingernails does not, in fact, strengthen the case against him.
It was not new to learn he was with Karen on the night that she had been murdered. We're now looking at this from what can the science show us? Who can we show did what based upon this evidence? So now we need to take the next level of testing and figure out what type of DNA are we talking about.
Detectives resubmit the fingernail DNA for a more detailed analysis. And the forensics lab has another surprise in store for investigators.
It was determined that Steve's sample was very minute and Ed's was the dominant sample. And the substance of Ed's was seminal fluid. I was a little shocked about that.
Steve and Ed were close friends, but there was no relationship between him and Karen.
Karen's autopsy had shown no evidence of sexual assault, so investigators are surprised by the indication of sexual activity.
That was unexpected. Why is Ed Owens' seminal fluid underneath Karen Strom's fingernails? What happened here? Was this consensual sex that then went awry? Was it not consensual sex? Was this a forced sexual assault situation?
In the 1980 investigation, Ed's alibi put him at a bar with friends when Karen was killed.
I contacted the co-workers, people that had been to the bar with Ed. I was at the bar the whole time.
The co-workers had also noticed the scratches on Ed's hands and face the day after Karen's murder.
Ed was asked how he obtained those injuries, and he said that he was playing with his dog.
Strikingly, that statement contradicts the one Ed gave to detectives 26 years prior.
Ed had said that those scratches were obtained by working on a lathe machine. This was raising some red flags as far as Ed's involvement in this matter.
Detectives are eager to talk to Ed themselves, but he fails to arrive for a scheduled interview.
Ed just mysteriously turned up missing. 2 days after he had spoken with me, left a note for his wife. It was a goodbye note. Well, after hearing this, I subpoenaed some banking records of Ed's, and through those records we determined that he crossed the border into Mexico. An innocent person just wouldn't up and leave his family and flee.
Detectives get another surprise when they dig deeper into Ed's background.
Back in 1980, the investigators ran a background check on Ed Owens in Utah. I, however, ran the national database on Ed Owens and found that Ed had been arrested in California in 1973 and charged with attempted murder.
A man raped a girl on the beach, strangled her, and then he stabbed her with a screwdriver and left her for dead. Ed Owens is charged and arrested, did go to trial, but Ed Owens' mother gave him an alibi. So the jury did not convict Ed Owens. Even though Ed hadn't been convicted, pieces of the puzzle just start to fall into place. We believe Ed's the killer.
An arrest warrant is issued for Ed Owens for the murder of Karen Strong.
When Sergeant Benson called me and said, "Coco, are you sitting down?" He goes, "Do you know who Ed Owens is?" I said, "I've never heard of him." And he said, "Coco, that's who killed your sister." I was shocked. All these years thinking of Steve, I was stunned. I was like, really? It was like starting all over again from scratch. Who's Ed Owens and how did he know my sister?
It was kind of a shocker to me because I was totally convinced that it was Steve.
With Ed Owens in Mexico, investigators strategize how to get him back to face justice.
I made contact with Ed's mother, advised her that I had a warrant of arrest for him, and that he could either come in voluntarily to meet with me, or his picture would be on the 5 o'clock news.
And then, interestingly enough, Ed Owens then shows up, came back to Utah, came walking in the door.
I was surprised that Ed actually showed on for his family of what type of a person he was. At that time, I took him to an interview room and attempted to get a statement from Ed. However, he lawyered up and didn't want to make a statement.
On March 14, 2007, after 2.5 decades, Ed Owens is arrested and charged with the murder of Karen Strong.
Our case is looking pretty good to us at this point in time. We've got science now backing us up. We've decimated his alibi. We've got the evidence of flight. So a lot of things were stacking up in favor of a conviction.
But then, 3 weeks before the trial, prosecutors are thrown another curveball when they learn of Ed's defense.
The defense's contention was going to be that Karen was having an affair with Ed. Steve became jealous and enraged about it. Steve went home and killed her.
The defense attorney was claiming that seminal fluid of Ed's only shows that he had had an affair with Karen, not that he had actually killed her.
It's a jolt, and we were kind of blown away. Ed had never, ever come forward with that story before. This was something new, so it opened up a new can of worms.
Prosecutors know this defense could be enough to raise reasonable doubt to a jury, especially since Steve had originally been charged with Karen's murder. But how could they disprove the defense's claims?
Is there a smoking gun with this case? We got to find it. We now need to regroup. So again, like they did back in 1980, we dismissed the case without prejudice as we're getting close to trial. That was not an easy decision to make, but we knew it was the right thing to do. We were confident we had the right guy, but at that point in time, we weren't confident we had a case where we were going to be able to secure a conviction. So Ed Owens walked away a free man. That was a tough pill to swallow because we knew he wasn't innocent. Can we prove it?
When the case got dismissed, it was very frustrating. When Ed walked out, I was ticked off, to say the least. However, this wasn't the end for us. We were even more determined that we were going to bring him to justice.
26 years after the murder of Karen Strong, police have arrested their second suspect in the crime, Ed Owens. But prosecutors are forced to drop charges against Ed, leaving Karen's family desperate for justice.
After they released Ed Owens, I told Troy, please don't give up, you guys. Come on, there's got to be something. Please don't give up.
I made a promise to Coco Saltzgiver. We're not giving up on the case. We're not abandoning it. Dismissal without prejudice means it can be refiled. We knew Ed Owens did it. We just wanted to get to the point where we knew we could actually prove it.
Detectives re-interview those who knew Karen to find out if she really could have been having an affair with Ed Owens before
jealous as he was, and also Karen's relationship with Buff. Karen would not be having an affair with Ed Owens.
With no evidence of sexual assault found during Karen's autopsy, prosecutors need to establish an alternate theory to Ed's claim of an affair.
So why is Ed Owens' seminal fluid underneath Karen Strom's fingernails? The best theory that we had is Ed Owens went into Karen Strom and Steve Strom's home that night in the summer of 1980, intent to sexually assault her. That Karen successfully stopped him. I believe that that's probably the best answer because there was no genital injury to our victim, Karen Strom. Yet there's a hell of a struggle. And the way he crushed her neck, it's in anger. He didn't get what he wanted.
Prosecutors know they only have one shot at making Ed pay for his crime, and they'll need hard evidence to convince a jury.
We can't let him get away with it now again for what he did in 1980. We had to continue to focus in on that crime scene, focus in on Karen's body, go through all the evidence again, looking at every crime scene photo that we had, blowing things up. It's there. We're not going to give up until we find it.
Investigators spend weeks examining the evidence in minute detail. Then, they catch something on the underwear Karen was wearing the night she was killed.
One of the things that we did notice was there were some very tiny droplets that had never been analyzed. They'd kind of been overlooked.
We submitted those to the crime lab. We did not know exactly what it was.
When those results came back, another one of these aha moments, that material that was on Karen Strom's panties was Ed Owens' blood. And now, we've got this. This was not a consensual sexual encounter.
It's the final piece prosecutors are looking for. Ed Owens is picked up and recharged with Karen's murder.
When Ed Owens was rearrested, it was a great feeling. Now we felt like our case was ready for prime time.
At trial, in front of Karen's family, prosecutors present how the crime unfolded.
Ed had gone to the bar, and knowing that Steve was coming into work, slipped out of the bar, and then went to the Strom residence to sexually assault Karen. Struggle ensued. She started lashing out at him. He ended up grabbing her by the throat, killed her, then went back to the bar with his co-workers, using them as an alibi.
Sitting through that trial and watching the evidence they had, it was horrific what he did to her. Oh my God, she must have been terrified. But she fought. Oh, she fought hard.
Who is the best witness against Ed Owens? It's Karen Strom. By the fight she put up and the evidence she gathered, part of what she got out of him when she gouged
was that Ed is innocent, and that Steve killed Karen out of jealousy.
It seemed like he was very cocky, and that he was confident that he was going to beat this case.
The judge let me address him at the trial. I said, "You took my sister from me. You took my best friend. You took the person I feel safe with in the world. You took that from me." And he's smiling at me. He was smiling the whole time.
After a 7-day trial, the jury takes just 9 hours to come to a decision. On April 1st, 2009, the jury returns their verdict.
When they said guilty, I just, yes! You know, and then I said, "Karen, we did it! Sissy, we did it! We got him!"
There were a lot of people that waited many, many years for justice with this case. When the jury said guilty, it's a sense of relief, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of justice for the victim.
Almost 30 years after Karen Strom was killed, Ed Owens is sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole.
His first parole hearing will be in 2032. Ed at that time will be in his upper 80s. Ed will essentially be spending the rest of his life in jail.
For Karen's loved ones, Ed may have taken her life, but he can never take Karen from their hearts.
I think of Karen all the time. I have a picture of her on my bookshelf, and I know her energy is still there. I can feel it. She was just so kind and so caring. She was a beautiful person, a beautiful soul. You can never be the same again when somebody's ripped out of your life like that. And you have that hole, but you can heal from something like this. It is possible. You fill that hole with life. And you hope you live a good life for her to...
many, many years for justice with this case. When the jury said guilty, it's a sense of relief, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of justice for the victim.
Almost 30 years after Karen Strong was killed, Ed Owens is sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole.
His first parole hearing will be in 2032. Ed at that time will be in his upper 80s. Ed will essentially be spending the rest of his life in jail.
For Karen's loved ones, Ed may have taken her life, but he can never take Karen from their hearts.
I think of Karen all the time. I have a picture of her on my bookshelf, and I know her energy is still there. I can feel it. She was just so kind and so caring. She was a beautiful person, a beautiful soul. You can never be the same again when somebody's ripped out of your life like that. And you have that hole, but you can heal from something like this. It is possible. You fill that hole with life. And you hope you live a good life for her too, because she didn't get to.
A devoted couple building the perfect family.
They were both very committed to adopting children that had a difficult past.
Everybody in the family loved her.
Murdered in a night of unspeakable horror.
She saw a man with what appeared to be an axe.
Her skull was split with a maul.
Who could have wanted Bob and Kay Swartz dead?
This person had threatened to kill them.
We couldn't rule out anyone. We just didn't know.
And what detectives uncover has everyone blindsided.
I didn't have a single suspicion. I would have never thought.
The relatives were in disbelief.
The expected killer hadn't done it. The unexpected killer had done it.
Nobody in a million years would have expected them to commit one of the most heinous crimes in the history of Annapolis.
On a cold winter morning in 1984,
Colorado County Police.
Police in Cape St. Clair, Maryland, receive an eerie call.
Okay, what is the problem, sir?
My parents are dead.
You think your parents are dead?
Yeah.
First responders race to the scene and make a horrific discovery.
When I arrived, there were uniformed officers that were protecting the crime scene who told me we had a 17-year-old and a 9-year-old who just learned that their parents, Bob and Kay Swartz, were killed.
The children are visibly shaken and in shock, but agree to answer a few questions.
My partner and I met with a young man by the name of Larry Schwartz and his sister Annie. Both of them were very calm. This young man, he said that he had gotten up that morning and that Annie, who was 9, told them that she didn't know where their parents were. He then looked out the dining room window and saw his mother's body in the backyard. He told me he immediately shielded Annie's eyes so Annie wouldn't see her body and called the police.
Detective Barr leaves the kids in the care of the attending officers and moves to the backyard. It's his first grim look at the scene of the crime.
Kay Swartz was found outside. She was a few feet from the sliding glass door in the snow. She only had one sock on her right foot. Her left foot was bare.
The blood in the snow was horrific. It was just horrific.
The blood had created a slush in the snow. Kay Swartz had puncture wounds around her neck, and she had a massive wound to the top of her skull.
Detective Barr then heads inside.
I looked in the basement area, and I found a black vinyl chair that had pooled blood beside it. It appeared as though she had been attacked sitting in that chair, and she bled heavily onto the floor. And there was blood from that chair leading out back.
Just when it seems the crime scene can't get any more grisly, detectives discover another ravaged body.
We found a small office adjacent to the landing of the stairs. The door was closed. We opened the door, looked inside, and found Bob Schwartz's body. there was an inordinate number of stab wounds to Bob Schwartz. There were defensive wounds in the body. We theorized at that point it was very possible that Kay was attacked first, and then Bob heard the noise and started to come out of the room, giving Kay the opportunity to flee out the back door as the killer or killers went after Bob.
As detectives make their way through the rest of the house, they see no signs of forced entry. Did Bob and Kay know their attacker? Or did an intruder sneak in through an unlocked door?
As I viewed this crime scene, the enormity was off the chart. There was blood found everywhere. It was extraordinarily gruesome.
Investigators collect blood evidence, but there's no sign of a knife or any kind of murder weapon. Then, toward the back of the house, they spot a critical clue.
We found a bloody palm print on the sliding glass door near Kay's body. We wanted to figure out who it actually belonged to. Bob obviously never left the computer room. He died where he was attacked. And Kay's body was outside, and neither one of her hands had blood on the palms. That palm print probably belonged to the killer.
While concerned neighbors whisk Larry and Annie away, detectives get a chance to talk to some of Bob and Kay's grieving friends who have gathered at the house.
When I found out that Bob and Kay had been murdered, I said, "What? You're numb. You don't know what happened." And I just couldn't believe that Bob and Kay were gone.
Bob and Kay Schwartz met at the University of Maryland outside Washington, D.C. They were both getting their master's degree in education. They both wanted to be teachers. He was 35, she was 27. She fell in love with him, and maybe 18 months later they married.
They were very involved in all kinds of church activities. Kay and Bob were intimately involved. Everybody seemed to know them. Everybody felt a connection with them.
Bob was an engineer of sorts, worked at NASA Goddard down in Greenbelt, Maryland, in the space program on some level.
Bob had to be a pretty clever man because he was involved in computers back in the dark ages, 1984.
He was always very positive. He was funny, quick sense of humor.
Kay was the fun-loving, carefree spirit, beloved by everyone who knew her. Always wanted to be a teacher, became a teacher. They wanted children, but Kay was unable to have children.
Far from breaking their spirit, Bob and Kay's disappointment only seemed to strengthen their bond and gave them a loving sense of purpose.
They decided they wanted to open their house and their hearts.
In 1973, Bob and Kay embarked on their dream.
That became part of their mission in life, in adopting children that had a difficult past, to provide some substance and some guidance.
Larry Schwartz was 6 years old when the Schwartzes adopted him. 6 years later, they adopted a 4-year-old girl, Anne.
Annie was born in Korea, did not speak much English when she first arrived. Annie and Larry were happy to be part of that family.
Kay and Bob wanted to be the best parents ever to those children.
Now, Larry and Annie were orphans again, and detectives need to find out who committed such a heinous crime and why. Police begin by talking to neighbors, hoping to find a witness who might lead them to the killer.
We were alerted by a person approximately a block away on a parallel street that he had found what appeared to be a blood trail leading into the woods at the end of that street. And as we followed that trail, we found what appeared to be a barefoot footprint and a socked footprint.
Were these Kay's footprints? If so, how did they end up in the woods when her body was found in the backyard?
We also found a pair of footprints made by shoes. Footprints suggesting a chase through the neighborhood.
The trail of footprints ran for quite a distance through the woods and the neighborhood.
The footprints seemed to suggest that after stabbing Bob to death, the murderer went after Kay one last time.
In my opinion, it appeared as though Kay Schwartz was fleeing from her killer, and at some point, a person caught up with her and then walked her to the back of the home where she was killed.
At the end of the trail, detectives make one more pivotal discovery.
Searching through the woods, my sergeant found what appeared to be a murder weapon. It was a wood-splitting maul. There appeared to be blood on the maul, along with hair. But the handle appeared to have been wiped clean. There wasn't any blood on the handle at all.
Detectives send the maul to the lab, but find no trace of a knife anywhere. It's a puzzling scene that offers them few clues.
It was a very difficult crime scene to try to put together in your mind what may have happened or how did this occur. At this point, we only had 2 children, Larry and Annie, who could provide any information.
When detectives circle back to them at the neighbor's house, they do their best to help.
Annie related to us that she had awakened in the middle of the night to her father's screams of "help me, help me." She continued to tell us that she went to investigate and she walked to the door that exited to the carport. At that point, she saw a man walking away with what appeared to be an axe over his shoulder. And she described the person as very tall, with curly hair, and I asked, "Was that person as tall as me?" She said, "No, he was taller."
Detectives speak to Larry next, but suddenly the 17-year-old seems nervous. Does he know something about the man Annie saw in the yard?
When we pressed Larry, he said that Michael was 6'4".
Detectives stop cold. Who is Michael?
And very quickly I established that Michael Schwartz was a brother of Larry.
As it turned out, Bob and Kay Schwartz had adopted 3 children.
Michael, who was also 17, no longer lived with them, but it wasn't clear why. So at that point, we were very, very eager to talk to Michael.
Coming up, investigators uncover bad blood and dark secrets.
They send him to a state mental hospital.
Detectives uncover startling clues.
Nobody expected anything like this to happen.
It became almost unbelievable.
Was there more than one person with a score to settle?
This person said, I could stick a knife in his back.
We didn't know what we were dealing with.
When they appear to have no suspects in the homicides of Bob and Kay Schwartz, police learn the couple's adopted children have an estranged brother.
Both Annie and Larry related to us that Michael no longer lived with them, but had been getting into a lot of trouble.
Detectives are anxious to know more. Could Michael have possibly wanted to harm Bob and Kay?
As we spoke to relatives during the investigation, Michael was quickly identified by them as someone we should look at very closely.
Michael had made threats internally in the house.
Detectives interview the Schwartz's friends and family to get more insight into Michael's history. Larry was the Schwartz's first adopted child. But long before Annie, Bob and Kay provided Larry with a brother.
Michael was 8 years old when the Schwartzes adopted him. The boys were only 6 months apart in age.
The Schwartz's second adopted child had arrived at their home, a troubled boy.
As they interviewed everybody, detectives found that Michael's mother abandoned him when he was an infant, and Michael was relinquished to the custody of the state and became a foster child. He went through a series of 6 foster homes before the Schwartzes adopted him.
Bob and Kay were determined to turn Michael's life around, but the boy's difficult past wasn't easy to shake, and the problem started almost immediately.
Michael was so antisocial in his approach to life. Michael was having behavioral issues at home, not obeying his parents on a consistent basis, smarting back, profanity.
As the boys grew older, Michael continued to struggle. But that didn't stop Bob and Kay from having high hopes for both their children.
I think Bob and Kay expected Larry and Michael to apply themselves very diligently to their studies and to do well. I think that Larry had a desire to please people. He had kind of a soft-spoken shyness to him. He seemed to want to engage with people. But I think Michael was a challenge from the get-go. I think Michael, he had some deviancies that probably would have precluded anybody from having any type of relationship with him on any level.
2 years after Michael was adopted, Bob and Kay found a new ray of hope when they adopted Annie.
Annie was cute as a button when she arrived. Everybody loved her.
Bob adored Anne. Annie became the apple of her father's eye, and suddenly Annie the baby became the favorite child. Everybody in the family loved her.
The more attention Bob gave Annie, the harder he was on his 2 boys. Larry seemed to be able to turn the other cheek, but not Michael.
Michael had been getting into trouble more increasingly over the last year or so.
Michael began to have problems of a fairly serious nature. Tension between he and his father, tension between he and the other family members.
By 1980, Michael's rebellious nature pushed his parents to their breaking point.
One night, Michael asked to go out, and they said no. So he sneaked out. Went out with his buddies. When he came back home at about midnight, he pounds on the door. His mother comes to the door, looks at him and says, "No, we're not letting you in." He goes over to a neighbor's house, spends the night, goes to school the next day on his own. And while he's there, his parents had called. Social services said, "We can't handle him anymore."
After 5 years of struggling with Michael, Bob and Kay were so concerned about his volatile behavior that they asked the state to place him with another family.
He never lived at home again.
It was just a very difficult situation. Bob and Kay loved him, but they felt there was nothing they could do for him.
While Bob and Kay tried to stay focused on Larry and Annie, Michael's state of mind seemed to deteriorate.
Michael had been in a reform school, and he got in a fight and got in some trouble, so they sent him to a state mental hospital for evaluation. And that was just a few weeks before the murders. He was staying at this facility.
The Crownsville State Hospital Center was terrifying, faceless, institutional, decrepit buildings, straight out of a Stephen King nightmare.
Had Bob and Kay's rejection led Michael Swartz to commit a cold-blooded murder? Detective Barr and his partner decide to make the short drive to Crownsville and ask Michael for themselves.
He was interrogated by these talented homicide detectives. Michael's denying.
Michael's words say one thing, but to the detectives, his appearance tells a different story.
They did notice it. Michael had very noticeable marks on his long neck, and he clearly had an injury of some kind there. But he said they were hickeys.
Detectives keep pushing, but Michael is adamant that he was at the hospital on the night of the murders, and the hospital records back up his claims.
We learned from the staff that their logs indicated that Michael had been there all evening.
He has what appears to be an ironclad alibi. I mean, he is in a locked ward in a state mental hospital.
The police weren't so sure. A lot of people weren't so sure. It was very lax at this Crownsville State facility. It's not a prison. It's just a hospital.
Detectives aren't completely convinced of Michael's alibi, but they don't have enough to arrest him either. And soon after that interview, Michael Swartz lawyers up.
Of course, I finally got to him. I did what all defense lawyers do, which is to say, don't say a word to anybody about anything. He was never interrogated again.
Michael won't talk, and the lab has found no useful prints on the handle of the splitting maul. But detectives know one key piece of evidence from the crime scene that could tell them everything they need to know.
During the investigation, there was a bloody palm print recovered from the sliding glass door. We had examined both victims. Neither one had blood on the palms.
If detectives can prove Michael Swartz left that print, they'll have their murderer. But that's easier said than done.
This evidence was difficult to analyze. We were very limited in 1984 with what we could do. This would involve the evidence being sent to the FBI laboratory in Washington.
Detectives investigating the savage double murder of Bob and Kay Swartz are hoping one of their most promising pieces of evidence will help them catch the killer.
A bloody palm print was lifted and sent to the FBI laboratory for analysis. We knew that it would probably take a long time to get those results.
While the feds in Washington do their careful work, the shocking news of the murder spreads.
There was a tremendous uproar in the community about this murder. A couple were murdered in their own home. A crazed killer chasing a woman through the neighborhood. There was a lot of pressure to solve the case.
That pressure only mounts when detectives receive the coroner's report. It's a grim account of a seemingly psychotic attack.
The wounds to Mr. Swartz numbered 17 in total, and in fact were lethal. Both his right and left carotid were severed during the attack.
On Kay Swartz, the autopsy showed that she was stabbed 7 times around her neck area, but they were very light wounds, tentative, and then her skull was split with a maul.
Detectives still haven't been able to locate the knife used in the attack, but the coroner's report does appear to confirm that they're on the right track.
According to the medical examiner, we had the right theory about how this may have occurred. Kay was stabbed in the basement, got up to flee. The killer would have chased Kay Swartz as she ran from the neighborhood and into the woods, then back to the house where she was killed.
Is it possible Michael Swartz eluded security at the Crownsville Mental Hospital and committed this crime? If so, detectives need to understand why.
I think it's fair to say there was tension in the house. Bob had a bit of a shorter fuse than Kay and had a little bit less willingness to be tolerant of some of the children's shortcomings.
Neighbors tell detectives a story they remember from a few years before, when Michael was still living with the Swartzes.
Michael got in trouble for some sin, fighting on a school bus, something like that. And his father decided physical labor was what he needed. So he gave him this heavy wood-splitting maul and said, take this stump out of the front yard, the dead tree stump. It was massive, a massive thing. There was no way Michael could get it. But he just swung it again and again and again.
Neighbors told us that Michael chopped at that tree every evening for up to 3 hours. And approaching a month later, the stump was still there. This boy had blisters on his hands.
Michael was seething and getting more and more angry. Everybody said Michael had threatened to kill his parents.
Could the maul that was used to teach Michael Swartz a lesson have been the same one that ended Kay's life?
Michael told his mother, Kay, that I could walk up to Bob and stick a knife in his back, kill him, and no results would befall me because I'm a juvenile. The logical assumption on all of our parts was Michael had made good on his threat. He had said he would do it, and now he's done it.
Four days after they were found brutally murdered, Bob and Kay are laid to rest.
The funeral, I had replays of having moments with them. I always admired them. Like, why would somebody kill them?
The couple's obedient children, Larry and Annie Swartz, have been staying with friends of the family, while their brother still resides at Crownsville.
Michael Swartz was allowed out of the hospital to come to the funeral, and at the cemetery, both boys stood over the grave and shook holy water, one into Kay's grave, the other into Bob's grave. Off to one side, the two detectives on the case stood in their suits with their sunglasses in the cemetery.
Everyone gathered around, gave them their support. But most people believed it was Michael who had done it.
Many note the suspicious red marks still visible on Michael's neck. Talk spreads through the community.
The newspapers were saying that Michael was a suspect. But even though he was in Crownsville at the time, there was some question about the accountability there, and maybe he could have gotten away and done it.
With lingering concerns over Michael's alibi and the security at Crownsville, detectives decide there's only one way to find the truth, once and for all.
Wanting to make sure that we had crossed every T and dotted every I, my partner and I decided that we were going to follow up and visit that mental hospital again. We wanted to make sure that it was impossible that Michael would never have been able to leave undetected. So we asked the staff to lock us in the ward where Michael was committed. If Michael could have gotten out of that, there was a chance Michael had done it.
Detectives are about to put Michael Swartz's alibi to the test by locking themselves in the room where he stayed at the Crownsville Mental Hospital.
If he had killed his parents, Michael would have had to leave undetected, return, and get back in without someone discovering that. And we went through every door and every window, and there was no possible way we could have gotten out of that without help. So it was very convincing to us that Michael was not at the scene of the murder. Michael's been eliminated as a suspect.
It's good news for Michael, but a setback for detectives. The young man was their strongest lead. Undaunted, investigators reach out to the public, hoping to cast a much wider net.
As we conducted our investigation, we methodically went through a list of possible persons that may have intended harm to the Schwartzes. We started a hotline for people to call in tips, and we got phone calls from various neighbors and acquaintances.
One of the many calls that come in immediately piques the detectives' interest.
Persons we interviewed told us that Bob steadfastly picketed an abortion clinic in Annapolis for 4 years, never missed a Saturday. And he would approach women entering the abortion clinic and attempt to change their mind about what they were going to do.
He would intensely try to dissuade women from coming into the clinic. He would get up in their faces.
Detectives confirm that a few of those women filed police reports against Bob, so they begin interviewing every complainant and witness connected with those reports.
The police were called on several occasions by the clinic. Bob was never arrested, but he caused the abortion clinic a lot of grief.
Could the killer be someone Bob confronted, or someone with a grudge against Kay?
Kay was a school teacher at Broadneck High School.
In her classroom, she was known for laissez-faire, not a strict disciplinarian.
According to witnesses, Kay was well liked in school. She was an easygoing teacher.
Detectives pursue every credible tip that comes in.
Our investigation revealed that there was no evidence that anyone would have a vendetta against her. In fact, there was no motive that we could establish where anyone would have been that angry or vengeful to want to kill either of them.
"8 days after the brutal double murder, investigators have hit a wall. With no fingerprints on the splitting maul and their single most promising piece of evidence still under analysis, detectives are all out of options. Undaunted, they decide to start fresh, poring over every piece of evidence they do have, starting at the very beginning.
Armando County Police.
Please have somebody come to my house.
Okay, what is the problem, sir?
My parents are dead.
You think your parents are dead?
Yes.
This time, investigators hone in on something they didn't notice before.
When I listened to the 911 call, Larry Schwartz said, "My parents are dead."
My parents are dead.
However, he told the first police officer on the scene that he hadn't gone downstairs. His father was in the basement. At that point, he was only known that his mother was dead, not his father. So there's an inconsistency there. It didn't make sense.
The discovery leads Detective Barr to take a harder look at Larry's version of events, and he finds several contradictions.
For example, Larry telling us that he saw his mother's body from the window. Yet I looked out the dining room window and couldn't see her body. I thought perhaps he was confused and meant to say the kitchen window, which turned out to be even worse. I climbed on the kitchen counter and looked out the window and still couldn't see her body.
Detective Barr had chalked it up to the extreme shock the boy had suffered that morning.
Larry's demeanor wasn't unusual at the time. Various people react differently under stress. He could have very well been in shock, repressing his feelings. I didn't know.
Barr wants to give Larry a chance to clear up his story, but that isn't going to happen.
Larry had gotten an attorney. The attorney had advised him not to talk to us.
At last, word comes in from the FBI. Test results on their key piece of evidence from the crime scene. The bloody palm print on the sliding glass door. The one detectives believed was made by the killer.
It came back. Finally, we could find out who it could possibly belong to, what we were dealing with.
Coming up, it's a twist that no one saw coming.
The chill just went up my spine. It just didn't seem right.
Detectives working to catch Bob and Kay Schwartz's killer finally had the results of their key piece of crime scene evidence from the FBI's forensic lab in Washington, D.C.
I was notified by the FBI laboratory that they had positively identified the bloody palm print recovered from the sliding glass door.
The results confirm what detectives believed months earlier. The palm print belongs to one of Bob and Kay's own children, but not the child they suspected.
It came back belonging to Larry Schwartz. At that point, the state's attorney for Anne Arundel County authorized an arrest warrant be obtained for Larry Schwartz.
Authorities charged young Schwartz as an adult with 2 counts of first-degree murder.
When the news gets out, it causes an uproar in Cape St. Clair. Michael Schwartz was known as the bad kid in the family, not handsome, likable Larry.
A chill just went up my spine. It just didn't seem right. I didn't have a single suspicion.
It was very difficult to accept that Larry had that type of violence within him.
Larry was seen as this model, mild-mannered son. Nobody in a million years would have expected him to commit one of the most heinous crimes in the history of Annapolis.
The community was in denial. The majority of them were convinced that Michael Schwartz had done this. There was certainly a lot of speculation about whether we had the right person or not.
It was very hard for people to believe that he could have done it. I think that they just felt there was more to this. There was more going on than any of us could understand.
Why would a docile youth, beloved by everybody, explode in a rage and stab both his parents? Why? Everybody wanted to know the answer.
Authorities want answers too, but Larry, at the direction of the defense team hired by concerned family friends, is not talking and has neither admitted nor denied guilt. So for the next 15 months, while Larry waits it out in jail, detectives spend every waking moment trying to build an airtight case.
We lacked a confession. The state's attorney for Analog County had me reassigned to his office to work exclusively on this case. We had to make sure that we had every piece of evidence we could get to close this case.
Without Larry's confession, detectives need to find out what led this soft-spoken boy to such violent extremes.
I continued to interview people, collect statements.
Investigators soon realized that Michael wasn't the only son who had a hard time at home.
I believe that Larry was under tremendous pressure. He was repeatedly chastised for the poor grades. He was restricted from leaving the yard.
I think it was more of a protection thing. You're trying to keep him away from the wrong crowd, and I think Larry could have been pulled in many ways. I think they were afraid of that.
I believe personally that he was angry. He was frustrated. It was cumulative, that he was holding rage inside him, and whatever may have happened that night set him off.
But some speculated that there was another reason why Larry turned on his parents.
Michael kept contact with Larry. He changed Larry's view of the family, and in a negative way. He was telling him that they just got rid of me, they want nothing to do with me, you know. Larry, he didn't want to be left like that. He didn't want to go into foster home again.
Larry was extremely worried that what happened to Michael would happen to him.
Then it changed, where he was afraid he was going to be put out.
Despite what may have led to this violent act, 17-year-old Larry Swartz is about to be tried for first-degree murder.
15 months after the crimes, the prosecutor had witnesses ready to line up, psychiatric witnesses who said Larry was sane, and he knew what he was doing, and he actually planned it. And they had a case to present that showed premeditated, cold-blooded murder.
Larry Swartz looked unconcerned as he arrived this morning from the county jail where he had spent the last 15 months.
More than 60 witnesses have been subpoenaed to testify at Larry Swartz's trial, which is expected to last 2 weeks.
I was at the courthouse expecting a trial. There was no trial. Nobody expected anything like this to happen. It was shocking.
After detectives and prosecutors have labored more than a year preparing their case against Larry Swartz for the murder of his parents, a last-minute maneuver by Swartz's legal team has brought everything to an unexpected, screeching halt. The trial is called off.
Larry had confessed to his attorneys.
He broke down. He broke down sobbing and heaving, and he said he did it, he was guilty, and he just killed them.
Finally, authorities have their confession, leaving behind any doubt of Larry's guilt.
Ultimately, the expected killer hadn't done it. The unexpected killer had done it.
Now, the state's attorney's office has to decide what punishment could possibly fit this crime.
The state agreed to a plea of second-degree murder.
The prosecutor recommended a 20-year sentence with all but 12 suspended. The judge agreed to make it concurrent as opposed to consecutive. I've never seen a case that lenient.
The state's attorney wanted me to take Larry to the confinement facility. He knew that if I took Larry, there was a potential for Larry to tell me why he did this. and how did it really occur? And I sat down with him and asked him to tell us, Larry, why did you do it? He didn't answer me. And I pressed him again, and he said, I just lost it. He said that he had come home from school that day, and later in the evening, his mother had asked him how he had done on his tests. And he knew that he had failed Spanish, and she had been writing him about not doing well in school. And she made a caustic remark about his grades, you probably failed them, meaning the tests. So he took a knife and he stabbed her repeatedly about the neck. And then Bob was alerted to the activity, the noise, and he attacked Bob. Larry never did explain or admit to chasing Kay through the neighborhood. I found out during the autopsy that she had been stabbed through her esophagus, so perhaps she couldn't scream. With sheer terror, running for her life, Larry did admit to putting the splitting maul into his mother's head.
After committing such a violent act, Larry knew there was only one way to cast off suspicion.
Colorado County Police.
We came to the realization that throughout the interview with Larry, he was trying to steer our investigation. He force-fed us information about Michael.
The whole time that his brother Michael was a suspect in the killings, Larry played the victim card.
When we were here for the funeral, Larry wanted to hang out with us, essentially, which we were perfectly prepared to do, not believing for a minute that he was involved. We viewed him as a victim, a kid who didn't have any parents at this point in time. It's, to this day, hard to fathom.
Though Larry's adoptive brother Michael had been exonerated, he nonetheless met with a tragic end.
When it turned out that he didn't commit the murders, he had nowhere to go. His parents are dead. His brother's in prison. His sister's been adopted by another family, and he has no one in the world. He starts doing drugs, and while he's taking drugs, he and his buddies go rob a man, and in the course of robbing the man, they stabbed him to death. Michael is sentenced to prison for life. None of the leniency his brother got. Life. He's now in his 50s, still in prison in the state of Maryland, 35 years later.
This just had to be one of the worst lose-lose destructive situations that society can see happen.
Looking back over this case, I have empathy for both Michael and Larry. I know that they struggled, yet the parents still tried to do the right thing.
Kay and Bob had adopted children who had been through a lot of bad times. And so I think they were trying to heal the wounds that they came to the family with.
For both Michael and Larry, I could understand the frustration, the anger, but I couldn't understand the murder. That's the part I didn't understand.
For more information on an unexpected killer, go to oxygen.com. a college student with a bright future.
He was a journalism and history major who planned to go to law school.
He had a huge social group. He was very well liked.
Is found murdered in the middle of town.
The wound was so deep, the blade of the knife nicked the spine.
Sending police hunting for an elusive killer.
This case was a true mystery, a true whodunit.
He was depicted as a promiscuous young man who could have been killed by anybody.
And when they catch him, it leaves everyone blindsided.
They did not want to believe this was true.
And that was pretty surprising.
When we figured out who did it, I refused to believe it.
Columbia, Missouri is best known as the home of the University of Missouri.
I think many people would consider us a college town. This is a city, small city with 30,000 students, coming in.
For the Columbia Police Department, a neighborhood of rowdy kids is usually as bad as it gets.
Mainly a lot of college-related crimes, such as the parties and alcohol offenses. Homicides in general were unheard of.
That all changes one afternoon in June 2004.
I received a call that someone had found a body in the East Campus area, and because I'm the East District Commander, I headed towards the scene.
Schwartz arrives to find a team of officers already securing the area.
The body was in between two apartments, lying face up, and he only had boxer shorts on. His throat had been slit, most probably with a knife. It was a very large and gaping wound. It was very deep. There's a few other abrasions on the upper body. So it was a very violent action, just a very violent crime.
I was a student in college, and seeing this in a place I knew really well was tough.
The forensics team processes the scene while police search the area carefully, but they can't locate a murder weapon or ID on the body.
We started talking with people in the area to see if anyone knew this particular person.
This was a part of town where everybody really knows everybody else. Everybody knows everybody else's business.
One onlooker thinks they recognize the dead young man.
The body was identified as Jesse Valencia. He was a young man attending the University of Missouri, and we found out that he lived in the neighborhood, block and a half from where we found his body.
The 23-year-old lived alone in an apartment just off campus. Police need to know if that's where the crime got its start.
We opened it up and started to look for any initial type evidence, trying to figure out who could have done this and for what reason.
The forensic team does a thorough sweep of the apartment, bagging Jesse's cell phone, cigarettes, and other items, while police canvass neighbors to see if they noticed anything suspicious the night before.
His neighbor admitted coming home drunk about 3 in the morning and going to bed. He was awakened by yelling that was going on next door. This neighbor actually pounded on the door and then went back to sleep.
The neighbor recalls that the shouting was late, almost 4 o'clock in the morning. Police are curious who was in the apartment with Jesse and what could they have been arguing about.
That obviously started to help us narrow down the time frame of when this may have occurred, but that's all we had to work with at that point.
There were no real clues as to who had murdered this young man.
A few hours into the investigation, another young man arrives at the scene in a flood of tears.
This guy named Jack Barry told investigators he was Jesse's former boyfriend who just lived a few blocks away. A friend had called Jack Barry saying that Jesse was dead.
If he had a relationship with Jesse Valencia, he was definitely a person the detectives wanted to talk to.
Jack agrees to come down to the station for routine questioning. But first, he helps detectives track down Jesse's family in Kentucky.
They called me on the phone, and a detective told me that Jesse had been killed, and I pretty much just took off running through the house and ran out my front door screaming. Just too much. Even when he was a little boy, Jesse never had trouble making friends. Everybody wanted to be around him because he was constantly smiling and laughing. And Jesse told me he was gay when he was 10 years old. He started crying, he got pretty emotional, and he said that he was afraid that I was going to hate him. And I told him that there was nothing in the world that could make me hate him. After that, he seemed pretty comfortable with himself.
As a teen, Jesse's confidence bloomed.
Jesse loved to talk. He loved meeting new people, making new friends. When he was in high school, he wanted to try modeling. He did really well at it, and I always thought that he wouldn't go back to school, but a year from the date that he told us that he wanted to be a model, he said he wanted to be a lawyer. That's what he decided to do, and that's why he went to Missouri.
Linda said he was a journalism and history major who planned to go to law school.
Jesse Valencia was one of those larger-than-life characters. He had such a big personality. He had a lot of friends. He had a huge social group.
Now, detectives need to find out who cut Jesse's life short in such a horrific way. They start by asking Jack Barry about his relationship with Jesse.
Jack told them he and Jesse had just split up, and he was trying to make Jesse realize it's over. I need to move on. Jesse still loved Jack, so he was having a hard time letting go. But Jack was already starting to see someone else.
Was it a fight with a spurned lover that the neighbor had heard in the middle of the night?
It was possible Jack had some type of confrontation with Jesse that led to his death.
And when investigators asked Jack for an alibi, it turns out that he doesn't seem to have one.
His alibi was, I was home sleeping alone. At that point, Jack Barry had become the primary suspect.
Coming up, detectives discover a secret romance
They had started a relationship very quickly
that uncovers a killer's trail
A lie is the next best thing to a confession.
to a surprising culprit.
It was shocking on many levels.
Detectives in Columbia, Missouri are questioning a man who had recently split up with murdered college student Jesse Valencia.
Jack Berry wanted to end the relationship. He wasn't happy with the relationship any longer.
Jack paints a picture of a couple growing apart after 2 years of dating. But a piece of evidence found at Jesse's apartment makes detectives question his story.
The investigating detectives found Jesse's cell phone, and the cell phone showed that Jesse had called Jack Berry at about 3:18 that night.
The neighbors had heard some type of an argument from the victim's apartment, approximately the time frame of when this occurred. So that would be obviously suspicious.
But Jack insists he was nowhere near Jesse's apartment.
Jack said that he had already gone to bed that night and that he heard a knock on his door at 3:18 in the morning, and then he simultaneously got a phone call from Jesse's cell phone. It was routine that Jesse would use his cell phone as sort of a doorbell. Jack said he was tired and he really didn't feel like getting up and talking to his former boyfriend at 3:18 in the morning, so he didn't go to the door.
Jack says he rolled over and went back to sleep, but police aren't so sure and question him for hours.
Finally, Jack broke into tears, and he said he regretted that. He didn't go to the door because what happened might not have happened had he done that. His reaction was so genuine, and it was clear that Jack still had a lot of love and affection for Jesse.
And it's becoming clear to detectives that Jack didn't kill Jesse, but they press him to see if he might know who did.
Jack said that he had no clue as to what would have happened to him and why anyone would have killed him.
23-year-old Jesse Valencia, the MU student.
Police found Valencia's body on East Campus, throat slashed.
As the story of the murder hits the 11 o'clock news, it sends shockwaves through the city.
I would say this was probably one of the most gruesome killings in Columbia. We don't have very many murders here.
The murder of a gay young man just a week before the city's first Pride Fest horrifies the progressive college community.
For anyone who thinks that they can get away with something like this so heinous is just unthinkable. We know from past homicides that a majority of them are with people that they know. Anyone who had had contact with him, whether in a sexual relationship or a social relationship, the detectives wanted to talk to.
Police begin to make the rounds of Jesse's wide circle of friends, wondering if there's anyone in his life that might have harbored any kind of grudge. One name they hear over and over is Zev Feintuck, a student that Jesse had met 2 weeks earlier at a political rally.
Jesse's friends had said, oh, maybe it was this guy because he didn't seem quite normal. There was something that made him a little bit different from other people.
Several of Jesse's friends, they said that Zev wasn't comfortable in his own skin and that he had a lot of issues with being himself. There was some contention whether Zev and Jesse were having a romantic relationship. They were spending a lot of time together.
Rumors about the two young men had been swirling, and after Jesse was murdered, the gossip about Zev began to take a sinister tone.
Somebody saw someone matching his description, looking disheveled and crying, walking down the street the morning of the murder, and a car he was known to drive was seen in that area.
That's when the detectives started looking towards him and started talking with him and seeing what he had to say.
Detectives call Zev down to the station, but he denies that the rumors about him and Jesse are true.
Zev said they'd never had a sexual relationship, but they were friends. Then Zev would come over and he'd hang out with him.
Police questioned Zev about where he was between 3 and 5 a.m.
His alibi was I was home sleeping. He was a young man who still lived with his parents.
They subject Zev to a voice stress analysis test to see if he is telling the truth.
It showed untruthful, so deceitful, that did seem to be some evidence of guilt.
Detectives quickly follow up with a visit to his parents, but they confirm that their son was home all night.
Zev's parents had said that when Zev would leave, he would always go through the garage door to get to the car, and so it made a big racket. They would have awakened his parents, and they said there's no way that he would have left that night. It seemed like he did have an alibi.
With Zev Feintuck discounted as a suspect, detectives continue to piece together the last hours of Jesse Valencia's life.
The detectives were talking with several of the friends of Jesse Valencia to see where he was on the evening and early morning hours that this occurred.
Police learned that Jesse had gone to a party at a friend's house around 11 p.m. on the night he was killed.
Some friends of Jesse said that Friday night, Jesse was at a party with a young man named Ed McDevitt.
Ed McDevitt was somebody Jesse had just met. Ed was a chef in town. They had met just a couple of nights before and had started a relationship very quickly.
Jesse's friends tell police that the two men left the party together, heading in the direction of Jesse's house.
And that was around 3 o'clock in the morning on the last night of Jesse's life.
It appears as though Ed McDevitt might have been the last person to see Jesse alive.
And it was possible Ed McDevitt went home with Jesse and then killed him.
"12 hours after finding Jesse Valencia's body, detectives track down 22-year-old Ed McDevitt and bring him down to the station.
Jesse had met Ed McDevitt 2 days before his death and invited Ed to come home with him on that Friday night, the last night of Jesse's life, so he became a suspect at that point.
But Ed claims that he and Jesse went their separate ways soon after they left the party.
And he was talking with Jesse on the phone at the time he was walking home on the last night of Jesse's life.
Ed says that his roommate was up when he arrived home and invites detectives over to talk to him themselves.
There's nothing found when they search his home, and everything Ed McDevitt told the officers they could verify by looking at his cell phone records, by talking to his roommate, and at that point, investigators let him go.
Police hope the DNA results pending at the lab will help them link one of their suspects to Jesse's murder. Desperate for answers, Jesse's mom grows more despondent, recalling an eerie premonition Jesse had years ago.
From the time Jesse was 7 years old, he had told me that he was going to die at a young age. He said, "I'm going to die at a young age, and I love all of you, and I always will love you, but I'll be okay." He would always end it with, "I'll be okay." And of course I got emotional and upset over it, but he said, "We've got to make the most of what time I'm here."
A day after Jesse's murder, detectives receive the autopsy report and study it closely for clues.
The medical examiner concluded that Jesse had been murdered in the area of 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning. The cut to his neck was the only knife wound, and it was the cause of death. And it was so deep, the blade of the knife had also nicked the spine.
The lack of defense wounds suggests that Jesse had been taken by surprise.
The most mysterious thing was that across his breastbone there were bruises, and in the middle of his back between his shoulder blade there were bruises.
The evidence suggests that Jesse was easily overpowered in the vicious attack. investigators hope that additional lab work will reveal even more and point to a killer.
There were fingernail scrapings collected during the autopsy, and also some hairs were found on his chest, and that was sent to the crime lab for analysis.
Until the crime lab turns up DNA, police have no choice but to move on to their next lead.
A lot of Jesse's friends were being brought in, they were giving evidence, they were helping out with information.
One of those friends is a fellow student named Andy.
Andy Schermerhorn was a young man who had what they called a friends with benefits arrangement with Jesse.
Andy was out of town the night Jesse was killed, but the day after the murder, he comes forward to share a shocking story.
Andy Schermerhorn told the investigating detectives that Jesse was having sex with a Columbia police officer.
He was having a relationship with an officer. I was surprised.
Andy nervously reveals an encounter 3 weeks prior at Jesse's apartment.
Andy Schermerhorn said that on May 14th, he had been at Jesse's home at night, and there was a knock at the door. And Jesse went to the door, and a uniformed police officer was there. And Jesse said, "It's okay, oh, it's okay, he's cool.
According to Andy, the officer took off his gun belt, and the next thing Andy knew, the three of them were fooling around.
After it was over, the police officer said, "This has got to be a secret."
A secret affair between an officer and a murder victim is a major red flag.
If any one of our officers had been seeing Jesse Valencia, why is he not being forthcoming? If you have nothing to hide, why not just tell us?
Detectives need to know who this officer is.
They said, "Do you think you'd be able to recognize him if you saw him again?" And he said yes, because it had only been about 2 weeks since that incident.
Detectives ask Andy if he'll look through a book containing the photo of every officer in the Columbia Police Department.
They were having him walk down the hall where he was going to look at the yearbook. Andy Schermerhorn flipped through it without even looking at the pages, closed it, and Schermerhorn began trembling, and he said, "I passed him in the hallway just now. It was him."
The day after the murder of Jesse Valencia, detectives in Columbia, Missouri learned that he was allegedly having a relationship with a local police officer.
Jesse's friend Andy Schermerhorn told the investigating detectives that he was an eyewitness to this sexual activity. Schermerhorn began trembling, and he said, "It was him that I passed in the hallway just now." And that was Stephen Arthur Rios.
Stephen Rios' commander believes Andy must be mistaken about the officer's identity.
When the detectives told me that maybe Steve had been having a relationship with the victim, I told the detectives, "You're absolutely wrong. He was married to a wonderful young lady, and they had just had their first child."
Schwartz knows the 27-year-old Rios well. The 5-year veteran is one of the department's rising young stars.
Steve was very outgoing. He communicated well, very ambitious.
He was a young officer who was on his way up in the department because he was a go-getter and a very popular officer.
Detectives don't know if Andy is telling the truth, but they're certainly anxious to get Rios' side of the story.
if he was having a relationship. That does not mean that he had killed Jesse Valencia.
Rios is out of town for a couple of days on a camping trip with coworkers. So they begin tracing Rios' steps the day Jesse's body was found.
He went in for his work shift later in the afternoon, like he normally did, and at that point, the body had been found.
The sergeant on duty that day had told me that Rios was coming to the scene to help identify the body. He had contacted the on-duty sergeant, but said he could help.
Rios said that I met Jesse Valencia when I gave him a ticket back on April 18th.
Investigators pull a copy of the incident report to see if it backs up Rios' story.
April 18th of 2004, some friends of Jesse's were having a party, and the party kept getting loud, and the police showed up to get them to quiet down. And Jesse, this intelligent pre-law major, said, "What's your probable cause?" Well, that got him arrested, and Stephen Rios gave him a municipal court summons for obstructing a governmental operation.
A call to Jesse's mother corroborates the report.
Jesse told me that when he was arrested, that the cop that drove him down to the jail was really nice, and that he talked to him all the way down to the station. And he said, I kind of felt a little bit uncomfortable because he kept asking me personal questions about my life that I didn't really feel like he should be asking me when he was trying to arrest me for something.
But the arrest wasn't the end of the officer's interest. The very next day, he turned up at Jesse's apartment.
After he got arrested, Jesse called me on the phone and he said, the cop that arrested me last night showed up on my doorstep. He said he had to ask me some more questions, but the questions he was asking Jesse were more of a personal nature. They went out a few times after that, and he would come to Jesse's apartment and just show up unannounced, even when he was in uniform.
Linda doesn't know much more than that, but thinks that Jesse's friend Joan Sheridan might. When they track her down 2 days after the murder, Joan confirms that Jesse saw the officer more than once after the arrest.
He had told her that the officer would typically come by sometime after 3 o'clock and before 6 o'clock in the morning, just for sex, and then leave.
Joan reveals that she got a close-up look at the officer one night when he showed up at Jesse's place.
They showed her a photo lineup, and she was able to pick the person that came by to Jesse's apartment that night. And it was Stephen Rios.
Detectives now have more evidence that Rios was having a scandalous relationship with Jesse. And when they hear what Joan says next, they suspect he may also have a motive for murder.
Joan said that when he went to court for his municipal court summons, Jesse assumed it would be dismissed since he was having sex with the arresting officer, and it had not been dismissed, and that had angered Jesse. So Jesse had told Joan that the next time the police officer comes over, I'm going to tell him that I have a little secret the chief of police might want to know if he doesn't get that ticket dismissed.
The detectives called me and told me that Jesse was threatening to contact the chief and expose Rios. Finally, the light bulb went off. You start looking at who had a motive to kill Jesse Valencia. Rios was very worried about his job. He was very worried about his reputation. He would be very devastated. He would be embarrassed by this information coming out.
That's when Rios became the suspect.
It's a serious matter to accuse one of their own. Investigators quickly regroup to plan the best approach.
They didn't feel they were ready to interview him yet. They were wanting to have the DNA evidence come back before they actually confronted him. But all of a sudden, Rios showed up at the police department and said, could I talk to you for a second?
He had this look on his face, like he was very upset. Very upset.
Coming up, detectives get a devastating phone call.
Steve called me, crying, very upset, and he said, I've done a bad thing.
And the investigation takes an unexpected new turn.
The officers found him on the 4th floor of a parking garage.
What was he thinking?
Detectives investigating the murder of college student Jesse Valencia are preparing to confront their suspect, police officer Stephen Rios. But Rios goes on the offensive first.
Rios said he was hearing from other people that Jesse was having an affair with a Columbia police officer. And I just wanted you to know that I did give him a ticket, but that's the only contact I had with him, and it's certainly not me.
But detectives tell him flat out that they've heard a different story.
They said, we've talked to a woman who said that she was at Jesse's apartment one night when you showed up. Rios sat there for a minute. And then Rios said, well, you know what? We did become social friends, but it never became anything like a sexual relationship. They said, we've talked to another young man who says he was actually having sex with Jesse, and you came by that night and actually came in and joined them on the bed. And Rios said, what, sex? Like it was the most astounding and false accusation you could ever heard.
He was getting very agitated with the detectives. He's a very prideful person, and he was very upset because they didn't believe him.
It's easy to see that Rios is lying. Detectives bear down hard. And finally, their suspect breaks.
Finally, Rios admitted that he had sex with Jesse. He tried to claim it was just that one time, and then it evolved into that he had sex with Jesse as many as 6 times.
It's a stunning admission and a strong motive for murder.
He was embarrassed. He obviously did not want this information out if he was keeping it secret to begin with, especially from his wife, in his family.
Police may not have the physical evidence to prove that Rios is a killer, but they do have something that's almost as good.
We were able to prove that he was lying.
There's an old saying in law enforcement that a lie, a provable lie, is the next best thing to a confession. And that Stephen Rios was caught in lots of provable lies.
But detectives aren't finished interrogating their suspect. They ask for his whereabouts the night that Jesse was killed.
He said he had been at work and he got off at 3 o'clock in the morning like he normally did. And he said that night he'd gone onto the rooftop of the parking garage with a few other officers, and they had drank a few beers before they went home. And he said he got home about 5:15 to 5:30, took a shower, and got in bed.
Detectives grill Rios for over 3 hours, looking for any cracks in his story.
He still maintained he'd had nothing to do with Jesse's death. At that point, investigators let him go. He was definitely a suspect, but the question remained, can we prove it beyond a reasonable doubt?
Investigators' next step is to create a timeline for the night of Jesse's murder and see how Rios' alibi fits in.
His wife corroborated that he had gotten home in that 5:15 to 5:30 time frame.
Other officers confirm Rios worked until 3 a.m. and then had some drinks with them on the rooftop that night. The security door records reveal that Rios left the roof at 4:37 a.m., 45 minutes before he got home.
One of the detectives actually drove from the parking garage to Jesse's home the same time of night, and it was 3.5 minutes. He then drove from the scene of the murder to Rios' home, and it was 10 minutes.
This gave a window of time of 20 to 30 minutes that were potentially unaccounted for at the time that Jesse Valencia was apparently killed.
And this gave us a timeline that could show that Rios could have done this murder within that time.
Investigators search Rios' home, car, and work locker, but they uncover nothing to tie him to the crime. Then, out of the blue, Captain Schwartz receives an alarming phone call.
Steve called me crying, very upset, and he said, "I've done a bad thing." The first question I asked him was, "Where are you?" And he said that he was in Kansas City and that he had bought a shotgun. I really thought he was going to kill himself. And my first reaction was no. I said, "You need to just stop what you're doing. Just come back. Just come back to Columbia and we'll get through it."
Captain Schwartz is able to talk Rios into driving the 150 miles back home, where police take him into custody.
Still wasn't under arrest, but he was put on a 96-hour hold for an involuntary commitment to a mental facility, just for observation to make sure that he wouldn't kill himself.
But Stephen Rios is still despondent. He manages to evade hospital security, and soon the entire Columbia police force is on alert.
I got a phone call that Steve had escaped and was on top of the parking garage, threatening suicide.
One of the officers found him on the 4th floor of a parking garage, and Rios climbed up on the wall, claiming he was going to jump.
When they called me and said he's on top of the garage, he's threatening suicide, what was he doing? What was he thinking?
Police officer Stephen Rios, a suspect in the murder of Jesse Valencia, has escaped protective custody and is threatening to leap to his death.
This is one of the busiest parts of campus. It's about 7 o'clock at night. He goes to the roof of the parking garage, starts threatening to jump.
There's a crowd below. There are people watching this. People are videotaping this, taking pictures. It's bizarre.
Police arrive on the scene to try to talk Rios off the ledge.
All I could think of was, here we go again. Why are you putting everyone through this? It was just putting everyone through a nightmare.
After a tense 45-minute standoff, they finally managed to talk Rios back from the brink.
He was taken back into custody and again put into a mental facility and put on a suicide watch while we were finishing our investigation to determine whether or not he would be charged with Jesse's murder.
3 weeks after Jesse's murder, the analysis of the hairs found on Jesse's chest give police the evidence they need to charge Rios with the crime.
They were able to say the persons who left those hairs on Jesse's chest, limb hairs that would have come from somebody's arm, those hairs matched to Stephen Rios. And that's when we realized that they teach Columbia police officers at the training academy how to administer a chokehold, and that cuts off the blood flow to the brain and renders a person unconscious in 3 to 8 seconds. That could account for these limb hairs, in addition to the bruises that went across the front of his chest and in the middle of his back.
On July 1st, 26 days after Jesse Valencia's body was found, Stephen Arthur Rios is arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
Did you kill Jesse Valencia?
No, I did not.
During the week-long trial, prosecutors lay out their theory of how the murder went down.
Rios came by after his shift was over, thinking they were going to have sex. Jesse confronted him.
Jesse was threatening to contact the chief and expose Rios.
And he knew his career and his happy marriage would probably be over. And that had angered Rios. The neighbor heard this argument going on, and Jesse's yelling, "Stop it, stop it." Jesse, then clad only in his shorts and barefoot, ran out, being chased by Stephen Rios. The Stephen Rios caught him from behind and choked him into unconsciousness, put him on the ground, cut his throat, and that's what I believe happened in the last minutes of Jesse Valencia's life.
Prosecutors know they have a strong case, but convincing a jury that a police officer is a murderer is sure to be a hard sell.
If even one of the 12 jurors feels like it's not the person, then you have a hung jury or a not guilty verdict.
After 8 long hours, the jury returns with a verdict.
The jury finds the defendant, Stephen Arthur Rios, guilty of murder in the second degree.
I did feel a great sense of relief and even pride when the case was over and Stephen Rios had not gotten away with murder.
Stephen Arthur Rios receives a sentence of life in prison for the slaying of Jesse Valencia.
I don't feel like that Jesse really got justice because I wanted the death penalty for him. He took my whole life away from me.
Anytime you have an officer who has done a heinous type act like this and taken someone's life, it is a huge stain. And for law enforcement everywhere.
For Jesse's mother, her son's legacy is in the way he lived his life, not the way it ended.
I want people to remember the Jesse that was constantly laughing and trying to make other people happy, because that's what Jesse lived for. He didn't want anybody to be sad. There's always the empty space. Everybody still misses him, and we talk about him daily.
For more information on an unexpected killer, go to oxygen.com. A vibrant and loving young mother.
She was just an awesome person. She had a little feisty side to her because of the redhead, but she was always looking out for everybody else.
Is found savagely murdered inside an office building washroom.
There was insulated electrical wire used to strangle her.
It appeared there had been a sexual assault.
Detectives pursue multiple suspects.
There were problems with the marriage. They had had issues. They had been arguing.
He was in the building the night she was killed. His prints matched the prints inside the bathroom stall.
And hunt down an elusive killer.
We talked to the attorney, who states that he is probably somewhere in South America.
I said, okay, where is he at? Can we get him?
that no one could have imagined.
I was in shock. I couldn't believe it.
It was very unexpected to see him as the actual killer.
Known for its live music scene, Austin, Texas is also one of the safest big cities in the country.
Austin's kind of one of those cool vibe cities, and it's just a very good mix of people.
There's a lot of green belts and parks and creeks and trails. It's a really neat place to live. Austin has not had the kind of crime and the volume of crime as other large cities. People do typically feel safe.
But in 1983, the town is rocked when a local businessman makes a gruesome discovery.
In the early morning hours of September 20th, 1983, the Austin Police Department received a 911 call. One of the tenants of an office complex had come in the morning and discovered things were out of place. There was a cleaning cart out in the hallway, so he went to try to find out if anyone else was still in the building. He did discover a deceased female in the upstairs men's restroom.
The 911 caller did not know her name, but he recognized her as the woman who did clean the building.
Police are dispatched to the scene.
When we located the female victim in the men's restroom, she was positioned inside of the stall.
She was undressed. There was insulated electrical wire that had small loops tied on the ends of them. Detectives believed that electrical wire was used to strangle her and be the cause of her death. It appeared, because she had no defensive wounds at all, that the killer came up from behind and surprised her.
Everything in the crime scene suggested that this was a violent attack.
There was wet toilet paper inside of her nose and her mouth. It stands to reason the killer put that in her mouth and her nose after he strangled her to ensure that she was good and dead.
There was a bodily fluid and a clothing that made it appear as if she was drug across the floor. Her clothes were scattered amongst the restroom, and it appeared that there had been a sexual assault. The victim was identified by an ID that was found inside of her purse. She was Lori Stout, a 22-year-old female from Austin.
While forensics collect samples, investigators look for other evidence left behind by the killer.
A significant fingerprint was located in the men's stall of the restroom.
When dragging her in there, a person would almost have to brace themselves on the wall of the inside of the stall. The print inside the bathroom stall matched a print on the second floor fire escape. So the two of those were pretty significant.
Had the killer fled through the fire escape after committing the murder? Detectives head down to the parking lot looking for more clues.
They found that there was a spool that was used for insulated electrical wiring inside the dumpster. They also found some looser pieces of the same type of wiring that was used to kill the victim.
Detectives bag the items for analysis. Back inside, police start piecing together a theory of who could have committed this horrible act.
The fact that the victim was killed inside the building in the middle of the night suggested that whoever did this had access or a key to get in it.
Detectives canvassed the building and talked to employees, but determined that no one had seen anything suspicious.
We were able to talk with two witnesses that saw Lori at about 12:30 a.m. as they locked up and secured the building and left.
We know that she was last seen alive around 12:30 in the morning, and the employee at the building discovered her body around 8 a.m. So she died sometime during that time frame.
Just as investigators are finishing up, a frantic man arrives at the scene. He identifies himself as Gary Stout and demands to know where his wife Lori is.
Gary Stout told detectives he woke up that morning and discovered that his wife was not home yet from work. He got worried and he drove up to the building, which was a short distance away, and discovered her car still in the parking lot. but it was surrounded by numerous police cars. It was at that point that the police spoke with him and broke the news his wife was found dead.
He was obviously traumatized by what had happened.
As police take Gary down to the station for questioning, the devastating news soon spreads to the rest of Lori's family.
I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. My whole world changed. I no longer had my confidant, no longer had my best friend. It was horrible, horrible.
When we found out that Lori had been killed, it was a big impact. It was overwhelming.
Born in Arlington, Virginia in 1960, Lori Coffey was a naturally warm and caring soul.
Laurie was the oldest of Laurie, myself, and TJ, but she was kind of the mother hen of us all. She had a little feisty side to her, and I think maybe because of the redhead, but she was always looking out for everybody else. She was just an awesome person. She really, truly was.
Lori was the leader of us three musketeers, me, Beverly, and Lori. And she kept us going.
After moving to Austin with her mother and siblings, in 1977, Lori met Gary Stout, who worked logistics for the military.
It all flourished very fast. She was so giddy about Gary, and they fell in love. All in all, he just seemed like a good guy, so we were all, okay, so this is it.
After a whirlwind courtship, Lori and Gary married the following year. 3 years later, Lori became pregnant.
She was over the moon, very, very happy. I mean, that's what she wanted. She wanted to be married, start having a family, and she was on her way.
But Lori is soon forced to face the harsh realities of military family life.
Gary got orders to go to Belgium. She was very sad. Lori was sad that Gary was gone overseas, and here she was facing having a baby on her own at home.
On January 26, 1982, while Gary is away, Lori gives birth to a baby girl.
Lori had a really easy labor, and now we have this little baby, and of course she was ecstatic.
I think that she very much enjoyed being a mother. I think that she experienced probably the happiest months of her life after I was born.
In order to spend more time with his family, Gary left the military and took a job as a maintenance worker in the same building where Lori worked nights as a cleaner.
She was very excited that he was coming home. That's all she wanted, just to be a mom and wife, homemaker.
With her life finally on track, how did this loving young mother become the victim of a cold-blooded killer?
As with any investigation, you have to look at those that are closest to the victim and those that have motive. As an employee of the building and maintenance worker there, Gary had access.
Down at the station, police questioned Gary about his marriage to Lori.
When we asked him about any problems in their relationship, he quickly admitted that they had had issues, they had been arguing, and were unhappy.
Detectives discovered that Lori actually went and stayed with her sister, Beverly, shortly before the murder happened because of a really big argument that she had with Gary.
Things were not going all that well for her and Gary, and she was miserable.
This definitely created a concern that there were problems with the marriage. So knowing that he has access and motive, it raises the level of suspicion that he could have been involved in this crime.
Coming up, detectives uncover disturbing secrets.
He wasn't happy in his relationship, and he admitted that he was looking at leaving her.
Lori's family felt very strongly that he was the killer.
Before a shocking tip takes police in a whole new direction.
We received information from a female victim of a man that committed a similar attack against her.
This is a big turning point in the investigation.
Could this be a serial rapist? Could it be a serial murder?
And has detectives risking it all to catch a killer.
He knew it was going to have to be something big for us to find him.
We were holding our breath. We weren't sure it was going to happen.
Police investigating the murder of 22-year-old mother Lori Stout are questioning their first suspect, her husband Gary.
When Gary was being interviewed, he was very forthcoming about the poor state of his marriage with Lori. So it was a little bit of a red flag.
At this point in the investigation, we need additional information about problems that may be in their relationship.
Lori and Gary were happy. When they first got married, she was proud to be a wife. That's all she wanted.
But things changed when Gary returned from overseas.
Lori wanted it to just be like it was before he left, and unfortunately that was not the case.
So knowing the family's account of their relationship as well, knowing that it was a volatile relationship, that created concern that he could have been frustrated with Lori and committed this type of act.
When detectives press Gary for details about why his marriage was falling apart, he makes an alarming confession.
He admitted that he had actually had an affair and was looking at leaving Lori.
Gary tells detectives that he met a woman while overseas and that she had since come to visit him in Austin.
At this point, the detectives are wondering, does Gary want Lori out of the picture given the very bad state of their marriage and the fact that he wants to be with this woman he's having an affair with?
Gary explains that he ultimately chose to stay with Lori, but detectives become even more suspicious after they ask him for an alibi.
He stated that the night before, he and Lori had an argument, so she went and slept on the couch. At one point, she finally just got up in the early morning hours, went to work. Gary did not have an alibi that we could confirm. He was at home with the young child, asleep. He could have left his house, gone up to the building, and come back. That would not be something we could verify.
So the marital difficulties, and now we've got a big fight, and Gary having access to the building. He's somebody that they're looking at pretty hard.
Detectives asked Gary to provide samples of his blood and fingerprints to be compared with evidence found at the crime scene.
He was cooperative with us. He provided samples that were requested.
Looking further into Gary's movements leading up to the murder, investigators reach out to his boss at the office building.
The manager of the building informed the detectives that Gary had fixed a water heater the day before Lori was killed. And he used the same type of electrical wiring that was used to kill Lori.
This was another extremely big flag in the case. All these things together really raised the suspicion that this is the guy.
As police wait for forensic testing results, Lori's autopsy report comes in.
Lori's cause of death was in fact strangulation, and that seemed to match the ligature found at the scene.
What was determined is that a sexual assault had taken place.
They were able to get a sample of semen. However, this is 1983, so there was no DNA testing available. In order to do any comparison, we used blood type antigens. This kind of evidence is helpful in narrowing down the field of suspects.
When we found out how Lori was actually killed, it was disturbing. First thought to my mind, one sick individual. One very sick individual that did it.
Pure evil. Absolute pure evil.
Detectives eagerly receive the results of Gary's fingerprints and blood tests, but they are far from conclusive.
Gary's fingerprints did not match the one inside the stall, but did match prints in the building. But he has access to the building and he is working there. His blood type, it matches the type found in the semen. But of course, Gary is married to Lori, so it's another piece of evidence that can go both ways.
Ultimately, we couldn't use fingerprints or any blood work to exclude him.
Running out of options, detectives try one last method to get to the truth.
Gary Stout was provided an opportunity to take a polygraph. During that interview, he was asked if he was responsible for the murder of Lori, and he advised he wasn't. The results of that polygraph indicated that he was being truthful and there was no deception.
Detectives were surprised that Gary passed the polygraph. Now, detectives have motive, they have access, but no evidence conclusively to show that Gary is in fact the killer.
With nothing to hold him on, Gary is free to go.
At this point, Gary is not ruled out as a suspect, but he takes a little bit more of a backseat.
Looking for new leads, investigators turn their focus back to the numerous employees who work at the building where Lori was killed.
What's difficult, particularly about a public space like this, is so many people have access. We talked to everybody that was a tenant in that building and started working our way through that process. Many of those folks were excluded based on fingerprints, evidence, everything else that could really put them to the side.
But police learned that the building's tenants weren't the only ones who had access that night.
We discovered that registration was being conducted from the University of Texas' satellite location at this office complex. And they stayed late after hours so that folks could come after work, sign up late into the evening. So this was definitely something of interest for us.
Detectives were able to get the names of the male students who had gone in that night, and they had them come down to the police department, and they got fingerprints of these individuals.
Police processed the fingerprints of over a dozen students and receive an alarming result.
We were able to rule everyone out on the list with the exception of one. We had a match, a fingerprint inside the men's restroom as well as a fire escape door. So this person is somebody we want to talk to and interview.
Detectives investigating the brutal murder of Lori Stout have just matched a set of crime scene fingerprints with someone who was in the building that night.
The University of Texas was having a sign-up registration at this satellite campus, which allowed people to come after hours in the evenings after work in order to get signed up for classes. So we start going through the list of registrants.
Detectives were able to determine that there was one student whose prints matched the prints inside the bathroom stall where Lori was found, and also on the fire escape door on that second floor.
That individual was identified as Robert Van Weese, and he was 18 years old.
Investigators interview Robert about his movements on the night Lori was killed.
He told us that he had been there for registration, and on his way out, he used the men's restroom upstairs. Once he was done in the restroom, he exited the fire escape because it was closer to where his vehicle was parked, which would explain why his fingerprints were found in the men's stall and the fire escape door.
Robert Van Weese did acknowledge that he saw the cleaning lady, which was our victim, Lori, after using the bathroom on the second floor before he exited the building.
Robert tells detectives that he left the building at around 12:15 a.m. Before investigators look to verify his story, they ask Robert for a blood sample to compare to the semen found at the crime scene.
Robert Van Weese was cooperative. He gave the blood sample at the time, and the detectives submitted it for testing.
There is nothing that we discover on Robert Van Weese's criminal history or anything else that causes concern. It appears he's had no contact with law enforcement and no violent offenses in the past.
He came from a family that is very well respected. His parents are pretty well-known surgeons in the Austin area. There didn't seem to be anything that would suggest him to behave in this kind of violent way.
While they wait for the results, detectives look for anyone who can corroborate Robert's story.
Detectives interviewed 2 employees of the education office, and they confirmed that they saw Robert Van Weese leave the building at 12:15. We know Lori was still alive because there were witnesses that confirmed she was alive at 12:30.
With Robert looking less and less like a viable suspect, his blood test results come in.
The analysis of the blood sample told us that Robert was not a match to the bodily fluids found at the crime scene.
The discovery means there is no hard evidence against Robert, and they are forced to let him go.
Robert Van Weese was ruled out and eliminated as a suspect.
With no new leads, the investigation falters. As weeks pass with no arrests, fear in the community grows.
The nature of the crime had created a lot of panic for residents, particularly females. It was difficult because there was no resolution.
It left a lot of fear in the community. The police felt pressure to find out who was responsible for Lori's death. I mean, this was a totally innocent mother, 22 years old. taken from her family in a very violent attack.
The people in and around that area where she was killed, they were interested in knowing what was going on. It was tough on our family. It is very frustrating. There's somebody out there that has taken a life, and you want that person to be held accountable.
Anytime there's a crime committed like this, there's an inherent pressure to solve it, to try to bring some closure and some comfort to the family and to the community.
A person that could do something like this, that's not somebody that's going to stop at that one act. Typically speaking, that person is going to continue to hurt other people.
We're always worried that, you know, he can continue to commit these kind of acts until he's brought to justice.
1 month after Lori's murder, police receive a promising new lead.
We received information from a female victim of a man that committed a similar attack against her. The victim was sexually assaulted and strangled, but she was able to get away.
He mistakenly thought she was dead, and she was able to identify him. That person's name was Daryl Kemp. Daryl Kemp at that point was in prison, but he was not in prison at the time that Lori was killed.
And so we started looking into this. We evaluated the information and started to determine if this could potentially be a suspect in this case.
Police dig into Daryl Kemp's background and discover a disturbing pattern.
It's determined that Daryl Kemp committed an attack in 1960, similar, where the victim was sexually assaulted and strangled.
He was convicted for the rape and murder of a woman named Marjorie Hipperson in California. He did receive the death penalty for that. But later on, that death penalty got overturned.
Ultimately, he was released and paroled in 1978. That's when Daryl Kemp moved to Austin.
His MO matched. He's killed in this fashion before, and he was in Austin at the time. So this is going to be somebody that detectives look at pretty intently.
Could this be a serial rapist? Could it be a serial murder? We had questions that we needed to get answers to.
One month after young mother Lori Stout was found raped and murdered in a bathroom stall, police are investigating a tip that she was the victim of convicted serial killer Daryl Kemp.
Detectives at this time were thinking that Daryl Kemp was a strong possibility as a suspect because of the similar MO, which was sexual assault and strangulation.
Investigators learned that although Daryl is currently in jail for an unrelated crime, he was a free man at the time Lori was killed. Detectives head to prison to question him.
The difficult part about interviewing somebody like Daryl Kemp is he's obviously been down this road before. He's got knowledge of how investigations work, and so information may be withheld or may not be genuine in his responses based on where he thinks or feels like your questions are leading him.
Detectives start by questioning Daryl about where he was around the time of Lori's murder.
They're asking him questions that would help tie him or connect him to the area that the building was located in. They asked if he knew where this building was, where he lived, basically to try to put him in a geographical area, figure out where he frequented.
Daryl tells investigators he wasn't near the office building where Lori was killed and has no ties to the area.
Daryl Kemp was asked if he was familiar with Lori Stout. He said he wasn't. Things that we're trying to pay attention to is whether his statements are truthful. Does his body language support his statement? Does it appear he's being deceptive? And is he forthcoming with his answers?
Not trusting the word of a convicted killer, detectives shift gears.
He was asked if he would take a polygraph. He hesitated with that because he didn't trust polygraphs. He is not cooperative at all.
It's the same story when investigators ask him for his fingerprints and a blood sample.
Again, he was very uncooperative.
Based on all the evidence collected, we had enough information to obtain a warrant.
Police collect Daryl's samples and eagerly wait for the results.
When the results of the analysis were returned, it was determined that he was not the suspect in this murder. It's very difficult and frustrating because we're at a stalling point again.
With no other leads, the case once again hits a wall. As the months turn into years, Lori's loved ones struggle with the lack of closure.
Why are we not getting any answers? You know, give us something. I myself have been lost without her.
Every time October 1st rolls around, first thing I think is, oh, it's Lori's birthday. Anytime when September comes around, when she was taken from us, it's not good.
The suspicion that Lori's husband Gary was the killer continues to linger and causes a deep divide.
My mother's family, even members of his own family, believed that my dad was involved.
We all still had that suspicion that Gary had something to do with it.
Eventually, Gary takes Dale and moves out of state.
Gary, he didn't want to have anything else to do with us. So it was like, oh my God, now we can't see Dale. I lost my sister, but I also lost that connection with my niece.
Being so young, she didn't really remember her mom. So it was probably quite hard on Dale.
When I was growing up, there weren't a whole lot of conversations about my mother. It was just the understanding of she wasn't there anymore.
As Dale grows older, she begins to ask questions.
My dad did not like talking about it. I did not have a family member sit me down and explain to me that this is what had happened to her. It wasn't until I got older, got access to the internet, that's when I learned that she was attacked, that she had been strangled, that she had been raped, and then she had been murdered. It was very overwhelming finding out about it in that way.
Lori's family continues to push for her killer to be brought to justice.
We never gave up hope. We tried to keep it fresh and focused on it. We were constantly checking in.
We had to get this case closed to help give our family a little peace. It was overwhelming.
The pressure finally pays off. And in 1992, nearly 10 years after Lori's murder, a new team of detectives reopen her case.
Now we have new eyes looking at everything. They look at the crime scene photos. They read all the police reports. They look at the various people that were interviewed.
Part of that process is to go back and look at old evidence. Are there things now that are available to law enforcement that weren't previously available? Is there testing that can be done?
Now we're in 1992, so we have DNA testing, which is much more powerful.
With that in mind, investigators revisit their prime suspect, Lori's husband, Gary Stout.
So Gary was contacted again and provided a DNA sample, which was compared to that obtained at the crime scene.
Police are hopeful that they'll finally have the evidence they need to make an arrest. But when the results come back, they are shocked at what they reveal.
It was determined that Gary was not a match. So officially, he could be ruled out as a suspect and remove the cloud of doubt that had been hanging over his head for some period of time.
I do believe that my father felt relief, but it was very difficult for him to talk about.
With Gary cleared, cold case detectives go back over the old files, line by line.
With any review of a case, you look at who's been interviewed, who's been eliminated, and what was discovered is that one of the reports that was provided as far as the blood typing seemed to have an error.
The documentation that was used to finalize the forensic report that excluded a suspect actually showed that there was a clerical error in that lab report. And that particular suspect should have been included as a suspect, not excluded. This is a big turning point in the investigation.
"10 years after wife and mother Lori Stout was savagely murdered, cold case detectives have unearthed a stunning error in the results of a blood test. That means a previously cleared suspect might not be innocent after all.
What was discovered is that the report said the subject could be eliminated, but there was a clerical error in the document and it should have read that he could not be eliminated.
This suspect is Robert Van Wiese, the 18-year-old University of Texas student. He was in the building the night Lori was killed, registering for a class, and he's the same person whose prints were found inside the bathroom stall and also on the second-floor fire escape door.
Detectives look into what Robert Van Wiese had been doing the last 10 years.
Robert Van Wiese had no criminal history. Here we have this 18-year-old college student coming from a well-to-do family, parents who are professionals, seemed to have a very normal, happy upbringing. He was cooperative. So that all combined with the report that we received, naturally excluded him as a suspect.
Could 18-year-old Robert really have committed such a brutal crime?
In talking with witnesses, Robert Van Wiese is seen about 12:15 a.m. and leaving at about 12:30. They see Lori in the building by herself.
Detectives re-examine the fingerprints he left at the crime scene and notice something troubling.
What they discover is that his story of exiting the building through that second-floor fire escape door would naturally support fingerprints being left on the inside of that door, as if you're pushing it open to leave. But some prints of his are found on the door handle on the exterior of the door, as if you're opening it to enter the building.
What this told us is that he had obviously left the building, but he had also come back in.
He would have been able to re-enter it through that same door if he had propped it open with something.
The discoveries mean investigators need to talk to Robert, but there's a problem.
We try to locate Robert Van Wiese, but we're not able to. We reach out to family members who are not cooperative. They provide an attorney's contact. We talk to the attorney who states that Robert Van Wiese is probably somewhere in South America.
All evidence up to that point showed he was in the Austin area, and then he likely finds out that he, once again, is a suspect, and now we have DNA testing capability, so he flees.
Fearing Robert has left the country, detectives scramble to find him. They interview dozens of his friends and family members, but no one is willing to cooperate. Before they can launch an all-out search, detectives still need more proof that Robert's the killer. So they come up with a plan to obtain his DNA.
With Robert Van Wiese having fled, we cannot get a sample from him, but what we are able to do is get what's called YSTR testing accomplished. And that's familial DNA, and it's specific to the Y chromosome that all brothers and fathers would share. So since Robert Van Wiese has brothers in the Austin area, that's something we can actually test.
In order to obtain the sample, detectives conducted surveillance with family members, and at one point they observed one of the brothers discard trash and retrieve it.
Trash is not something you need to get a search warrant for because it's what's deemed abandoned. So detectives take specific items that would gather DNA evidence, like razor blades and toothpicks, and they conduct YSTR testing.
When the DNA tests come back, the results are conclusive.
And lo and behold, it's a match.
Finally, we're able to make a direct connection with Robert Van Wiese to the DNA found at the crime scene. It was surprising to know that a young male coming from the background that he did had the ability to do this at such a young age.
There were no red flags with him. And so it was very unexpected to see him as the actual killer.
We finally had a name. I just totally broke down. And so you're trying to wrap your head around, how could an 18-year-old do something like this?
It was shocking because I was 18 myself at the time. I would have never have had that cross my mind. I said, okay, where's he at? Can we get him? And then that's when we learned that he was gone.
Robert Van Wiese is charged with murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, and a warrant is issued for his arrest. Investigators team up with the FBI and launch an international manhunt.
The Van Wiese family owned a lot of properties throughout Mexico. We conducted telephone toll analysis. We looked at financial records. We monitored travel of Van Wiese's family. We did a tremendous amount of ground surveillance on locations where we thought he might be. There were some tips that the FBI received for sightings of Van Wiese in Mexico in certain locations, but we weren't successful in locating him.
Years pass with no sign of Robert, but detectives refuse to quit.
All you want to do is bring the guy back so he can face justice and get some kind of closure for the victims. But even the FBI, we have limited access, limited resources, and Mexico is a big country. There's plenty of places for him to hide.
It is very frustrating because for me, I've lived my entire life waiting for justice, but also very cognizant of the fact that it may never happen.
Then in 2016, the hunt for Robert Van Wiese takes a promising turn.
Van Wiese had been on the run for 20 years, so I knew it was going to have to be something big for us to find him. And so we discussed it, and we said, let's do it. Let's go for it.
On December 13th, 2016, the FBI places Robert Van Wiese on their top 10 most wanted list.
This was huge for our case because it brings awareness, but also that comes with a $100,000 reward. So it was exciting to know that we're making traction.
Once we announced his addition to the FBI's 10 most wanted list, we again interviewed people that knew him and possibly knew where he was. Probably the most important interview was with Van Wiese's mother. We said, Robert is going to be arrested. He is coming home. The safest way is to turn himself in. I think the mother realized with the $100,000 reward, his name on the 10 most wanted list, that it was going to be insurmountable that he was going to get arrested.
The pressure pays off, and a phone call comes in that changes everything.
Robert Van Wiese's attorney contacted the district attorney's office to let them know that he wants to turn himself in.
33 years after the murder of Lori Stout, her elusive killer, Robert Van Wiese, is ready to return to the U.S. to face justice.
Robert Van Wiese's lawyer contacted the district attorney's office and started to inquire about possible surrender with a plea bargain agreement. Typically speaking, when someone is a fugitive, we do not negotiate, but circumstances in this situation are quite unique. Mexico will not agree to extradite to Texas if the death penalty is on the table. So we will not get him in our hands if he's arrested in Mexico unless we agree to not have death penalty on the table.
Wanting a swift resolution, the district attorney negotiates a deal.
Van Wiese would agree to turn himself in, and they agreed to 30 years in prison.
On January 26, 2017, police head to the Mexican border to meet Robert.
The plan was for him to surrender, but we were holding our breath. We weren't sure it was going to happen.
We're anxious that this is finally going to take place, but until we have Robert Van Wiese in physical custody, we can't let our guard down.
The arrangement was that he would meet us at the halfway point on the pedestrian bridge. There's a line in the middle. On one side says Mexico, on the other side says United States. He was to meet us there at 1 o'clock. He didn't show up.
As the minutes tick by, investigators start to worry they've been duped.
We had assurances from the attorney that he would show up, but at any point during that time, he could have turned around and changed his mind, and there was nothing we could have done.
At 1:36 p.m., a lone figure approaches the border.
He walked up very slowly, stopped at the line. He introduced himself as Robert Van Wiese, and I said to him, "You ready to turn yourself in?" He took a deep breath. He closed his eyes. He said, "Yes." I said, "Step on across." And he took one step over, and he was arrested.
Seeing him walk across that bridge and seeing law enforcement put handcuffs on him, it was extremely satisfying.
There'd been so much work from so many different people over the years, that from 1983 up until 2017, now we have somebody that's accountable and be brought to justice. Was one of the most rewarding experiences in my career.
I sent the picture to Dale and let her know we got him. And I get a text back that it apparently was Dale's birthday. So it was pretty emotional.
She showed me a photo of Van Wiese being escorted into custody. It's kind of hard to believe that after all of these years that it would be that day of all days that he would turn himself in.
It was, and it still is surreal that it finally did happen. I mean, it just emotions everywhere. I just can't, it's finally over. It's finally over. Finally over.
The plea deal means Robert does not have to speak to investigators, leaving them to piece together how they believe the murder unfolded.
He showed up that night to register for classes. He sees Lori as she's cleaning. It's possible that Robert Van Wiese and Lori Stout had an interaction as he passed her. Maybe she spoke to him. He goes to the bathroom, develops his plan on coming back in.
He's opportunistic. The opportunity rose, and he left through that fire escape door on the second floor, propped it open.
And once the other workers had all left, I think he came back in.
When he came back in, he would have passed in the parking lot the dumpster that had some leftover electrical wiring that Gary Stout had used that day for the hot water heater, and grabbed it and went upstairs and then attacked her, raped her, and killed her. Lori was killed in probably one of the most personal, violent ways that someone can be killed. Robert Van Wiese is an extremely cold and calculating person.
On March 28, 2017, Robert pleads guilty to Lori's murder and is sentenced to 30 years in prison. Lori's sister, Beverly, is there to deliver an emotional impact statement.
I looked him right in the eye and told him what he had taken from our family and what it had done. And, I just told him I hope he rots in hell and gets to feel some of that terror that my sister felt that night. I know in my heart he is where he needs to be.
I think Lori's family felt a sense of relief, a sense of closure that maybe now, at least my hope for them now with that is that they could at least start to heal.
Him being arrested and incarcerated does bring closure. I think that that's what everybody dreams about when a crime like this happens to one of their family members.
Still see Lori's face quite often. She was a hoot. Lori was a hoot. I miss her dearly.
I do believe that my life would have been very different if she would have lived. And I know that she would have done anything to make sure that I had what I needed.
I still think of Lori every day, every single day. There were a lot of good times.
Victory!